Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners. Audience members, I want to start by asking you to please silence your electronic devices. I would also like to remind you that in addition to the audience in this room, we have people watching and listening online, so please consider your language in comments and testimony today. Today's meeting is a hybrid board meeting. Some presenters and guests will appear in person and some will appear virtually. For those presenting virtually, please mute your mic when not speaking, and when presenting, make sure to unmute your mic and turn on your camera. For those joining us in person to provide public testimony or present, please turn your mic on when you begin speaking so the green light is showing, and off when you've completed your remarks so the red light is showing. And for all presenters, please state your name for the record before speaking or responding to questions. May I have a motion on the consent calendar? Second. Commissioner Jones-Dickson moves. Commissioner Moyer seconds. Approval of the consent calendar. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. The consent calendar is approved.
Opportunity for public comment on non-agenda matters. This is a time for the board to hear public testimony, not for board deliberation. When it is your turn to speak, I will call your name and unmute you or call you to the presenter's table. I'll set a timer for 3 minutes when you begin speaking and announce when your time is up, at which point please wrap up your sentence. We have 3 people signed up for verbal testimony and received 9 written testimonies which were shared with board members and staff. The 3 people signed up are Clinton, Harold Shackelford, Dan Hagan, and Lightning. Please come down to the table.
Good morning. Welcome. You can begin. Yeah, you're all set. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Commissioners, my name is Clinton Harold, a North Bend, Oregon resident. I am entering an audited resource indictment into the record regarding how statewide infrastructure priorities are actively starving critical projects right here in Multnomah County. On May 29th, the state was forced to file a formal appeal following the federal government's outright denial of your hazard mitigation grant program funding. Multnomah County taxpayers are now left unhedged, forced to drain millions from your own county general fund to fix local utility decay and emergency infrastructure. Yet look at where our state's limited political capital is being systemically diverted. Last month, leaders celebrated an $11.25 million federal grant for the speculative Coos Bay Port, driving unbuilt planning allocations past $60 million. Let's look at what that money could have funded here. It could have completely covered the $5 million engineering design phase to replace your own crumbling 110-year-old Stark Street Bridge in Troutdale, where heavy freight is currently banned due to critical structural decay. It could have completely neutralized the millions in painful human services reductions forced onto your county's youth and family lines under this newly adopted budget. Instead, your leaders are chasing a coastal project with a realistic Northwest engineering floor of $16.56 billion based on regional benchmarks like the I-5 bridge. Every dollar of state focus thrown down that coastal speculative hole is money actively stolen from Multnomah County's local street repair backlog. Worse, the private market is already rendering it obsolete. The federal government is actively reviewing a coast-to-coast rail merger between Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern to streamline 100 existing ports. The private sector is manufacturing its own transcontinental efficiency. There is zero macroeconomic need for a speculative new coastal footprint. While the city of Portland is legally forced to petition federal regulators to mitigate the projected 22% surge in industrial train traffic through your local neighborhoods, our state leaders are simultaneously diverting finite matching funds away from this county to chase an unbuilt coastal fantasy. Furthermore, the federal government cannot legally permit it. Under 40 CFR 230.10a, federal environmental criteria strictly prohibit the discharge of dredged material if there is a least environmentally damaging practical alternative available. Because the Port of Portland right here in your county possesses massive underutilized container terminal infrastructure that requires zero environmental destruction to operationalize, the project fails the federal LEDPA standard by default, diverting state matching funds away from Multnomah County's existing infrastructure to build a speculative asset that violates federal law is an absolute betrayal of your local asset base. This is not economic development, it is a calculated capital transfer away from your county. Enjoy the decline.
Thank you. Good morning. You can begin.
I'm going to set the timer as well. All right, good morning, board. Chairman Vega Peterson. My name is Dan Hagan, and I'm here to address concerns about the members of the public, how the members of the public are being treated by both the library and county agencies that are supposed to serve them. The library defines a disruption as a situation where the library cannot function normally because of the behavior or actions of a patron. My concern is that this definition is being applied inconsistently and in some cases based on inaccurate or exaggerated incident reports written by the staff, an ethical issue. I've also experienced staff members walking past me, referring to me as a stalker for asking for a staff member's name. As someone who is a survivor of stalking, has a permanent stalking order, that language is deeply inappropriate, unprofessional, and ultimately intimidating. It sends a message that certain members of the public are not welcome at the Central Library. But my concerns extend beyond both the library. At the ODHS office, I have witnessed elderly individuals, parents with children, and people with disabilities, the people who need the most help. We can all agree. Being prevented from sitting inside a nearly empty lobby because there is a limit of 10 people allowed. Security personnel have attempted to remove people from chairs and deny them access to seating until a supervisor intervened. Yet there appears to be zero accountability for Intercom and the staff who work with them. My most concerning incident was on June 18th at the Fifth Avenue office. While peacefully protesting and informing staff that I was waiting for the police to walk me off the property, I told them repeatedly not to touch me, not to touch me. I was pushed to the ground and dragged by my backpack strap, which I was gonna bring up, around my neck, yanked on it by two security members, dragged out the door onto the sidewalk and left. Now, there was witnesses that will testify, but the police have no interest in pursuing an assault case against a security guard who, gets the leeway to assault people. He couldn't do that. A police officer couldn't do that. A doorman at a bar couldn't even do that. But yet your county pays for that to happen. I'm asking the board to immediately end the practice of the demeaning practice of keeping people out of a nearly empty lobby. Like today, these people should not be outside on the sidewalk. These people should be in a lobby that you can see from the sidewalk is empty.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bless you.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Superhumanity, AI for Fun, AI for Everyone Lab. Now, when we're talking about the Moda Center, and you had your briefing here, and they had another, I guess, a workshop over at the city, I'm going to speak up for a group that I think is being disrespected in this whole process, and that's the Portland Fire. Why did you not invite any of their representatives from their team to this meeting and the meeting at City Hall? They are one of the most important franchises out there, in my opinion, on what they're currently doing. And if the Portland Trailblazers do happen to leave, again, that's going to be up to Tom Dundon and his group. You have the Portland Fire. And let me tell you something, they can carry this city, in my opinion, as well as the Portland Trailblazers can. But you disrespected them, in my opinion, for not having them at the table. That's total disrespect. So I'm speaking up on their behalf. Don't disrespect them again. They have every right to talk about the Moda Center, every right to decide what they want to have done there, and every right to end up being the main anchor tenant if that does happen. Now, let's talk about the Moda Center again. If my good friend Phil Knight, Phil, if you hear me, if you would have bought the Blazer team, would we even be talking about this public funding? Come on, Phil. Would you have paid for it all, like Steve Ballmer did? The answer is yes. Now, that being said, Phil, you see all the problems coming on right now, and they're all looking at Tom Dundon. I'm asking you to put up $600 million for the renovation, Phil, alongside Tom Dundon, and allow these municipalities to hire back their workers they have to lay off to do their little pet project, the Moda Center. My good people at Multnomah County, my good friends at the City of Portland don't deserve to lose their jobs over this Moda Center renovation. So I'm asking you, Phil Knight, step in alongside Tom Dundon and put this renovation deal together and get these municipalities back to doing services for these community members that they, for whatever reason, think that next year, too, we're going to have budget shortfalls and you can just keep laying off my friends. No, that's not what's going to happen. That's not what's going to happen in front of me, and I'm calling you all out. So again, Phil, I'm asking you to step in, and if necessary, bring in Steve Ballmer. He'll put up some of the money. And if necessary, bring in Jeff Bezos. He'll put in some of the money. And if necessary, call up Michael Jordan. He'll gladly put up some of the money. Thank you so much, Phil. Get this taken care of and get these municipalities back to taking care of the people like they should. Quit laying off the workers.
Thank you.
That's all for non-agenda public testimony. We can move on to R1.
Thanks, Tasia.
R1, approval of Oregon Historical Society levy funding agreement.
May I have a motion? Commissioner Singleton moves, Commissioner Jones-Dixon seconds, approval of R1. Good morning. So we have Carrie Timchek here and Eric Ariano here. This is our action for the board to consider approving a new funding agreement to continue our partnership with the Oregon Historical Society. I just wanted to start off by saying congratulations, Carrie, on the passage of the renewal of the Oregon Historical Society and 4 East County Historical Societies levy. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Hey, good morning, Chair. For the record, Eric Ariano, Chief Financial Officer, and obviously I have Carrie with Oregon Historical Society, Executive Director, with me. So what I wanted to do is kind of quickly go through some high-level points around the funding agreement that we're asking you to approve today, with some changes, but also some context in terms of what it has within the agreement. And so, as I said, we're here to request your approval on a funding agreement with the Oregon Historical Society with Multnomah County. And as you well note, that the voters on May 19th approved a ballot measure 261 that renewed the local levy option for the Oregon Historical Society that applies a 5-cent levy on every $1,000 of assessed value. This levies for a 5-year period, beginning with 2026 to 27, and then 2030 through 31 for a 5-year period. So the proposed changes are relatively unsubstantiative. There are updates on, obviously, the term of the agreement. There are updates on dates, reference updates, and administrative amounts with the funding agreement. The first point is that if you were to approve this today, the funding agreement would be effective May 20th and would run through June 30th of 2032. I will note that that ending period is beyond the levy period, but taxes are collected beyond the 5-year levy period, so we need that additional time frame to distribute the additional taxes that we do collect during that time frame. In terms of obligations that the county has under the agreement, is obviously we assess, collect, and distribute the funds to the Oregon Historical Society on an annual basis. We also support the Levy Oversight Committee that is really tasked with monitoring expenditures throughout the year to make sure that dollars are being spent in alignment with what the voters approved. The group meets at least semi-annually, and obviously the Oregon Historical Society provides an annual briefing to this board on activities related to the Oregon Historical Society. Within the agreement, the county does get an administrative payment for $35,000 that helps us support our time devoted to obviously collecting and distributing the tax, but also to support the activities related to the Oversight Committee that we're responsible for supporting. The Oregon Historical Society is obviously responsible for operating the Oregon Historical Society facility, and activities, but also they're required to maintain agreements with 4 other historical societies. That is the East County Historical Organization, the Gresham Historical Society, the Troutdale Historical Society, and the Crown Point Country Historical Society. So again, they're required to maintain agreements, but also to provide annual funding to each of those organizations across the county. The Oregon Historical Society is also required to conduct an annual fiscal audit, which is really focused in on, again, making sure that dollars that are being collected from this tax are being used in alignment with the goals and the mission of what the voters approved in terms of the ballot. So again, in summary, pretty minor changes to the funding agreement. Obviously, we've had this version of this funding agreement for all the years that the levy's been in place overall. So I'm going to pass it over to Kerry to see if he wants to add any additional information related to the agreement, but also if he just wanted to comment just in general.
Yes, Chair, for the record, Kerry Timchik, Executive Director, Oregon Historical Society, and one, just thank you, profound thank you to the commissioners for putting this on the ballot again, and to some 64% of the Multnomah County voters who passed it. One change that was put into this is the language says that payments will be made of at least $27,500 to each organization, the 4 East County societies, $55,000 annually. OHS may choose to increase allocations and payments to individual historical societies pending review and approval from the LOC. At their last meeting of 2025, the LOC unanimously passed a resolution saying that if the levy were to approved, the amounts would go up to $37,500, or excuse me, $35,000 semi-annually, $70,000 total annually. So the first payment that will go out in July, soon after we get the money in July, will be of $35,000. So the LOC raised the money to each of the 4 East County societies. The only other item I would bring up is that the 2 co-chairs who have served so well, Jan Dilge and Diane McKeel, and many of the LOC members have served for the entire length of the levy and longer. They've all expressed a willingness that they've loved serving, but it's time for a new LOC. So I'll be working with your office, Chair, and with ON to start a process maybe to get a new LOC that would oversee this newly renewed levy.
Look forward to that, Kerry. All right,
So for any questions or comments.
great, thank you so much. Taisha, do we have any public testimony on this item?
Yes, we have 2 people signed up.
Okay, if you wouldn't mind stepping back and just sitting in the chairs right behind you, and then we'll call you back up for to see if there are any questions or comments from the board.
We have Gabriel Weaver and Lightning.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Superhumanity, AI for Fun, AI for Everyone Lab. I absolutely agree on this. Approve it. And again, to my AI friends, I expect more money to be donated to these historical societies. And I want a lot of research done on exactly what you do, the computer industry and everything else you're involved in. And we need to have this really data-based and digital form at these societies, and I think the AI community should step up and really start to fund this and have a lot of input. So again, to Jensen Huang and Lip Bhutan and Jeff Bezos and all the big names out there, let's get some funding brought forward. Now, talking about the Historical Society in New Bedford, they did the Abolitionist Row Park, which I was very impressed with, and they have the statue of Frederick Douglass. But back in the day when he was in New Bedford, he was working on some of the ships. So the statue that they have there is actually him sitting on top of some rope rolls there, showing respect to the maritime industry that he worked there. And Anna Johnson and Nathan Johnson, who was the Underground Railroad, bought the home from Charles W. Morgan, which is my great-great-great-great-grandfather from New Bedford. And they would have worked alongside Frederick Douglass. And they would have worked with him because they were the abolitionists back in the day from the Quakers, the Quaker community. And they were working with the people on the Underground Railroad, and also a lot of people need to understand that a lot of the ships were utilized to move people back and forth and to get them into safe places for long periods of time when they went out on their different ventures. And that's all documented at the Library of Congress under Charles W. Morgan. And you can review that. But again, on this Historical Society, what I'd like to ask is that in front of the Historical Society in Portland, I'd like to have a Frederick Douglass statue put right there. And they can make contact to the New Bedford Historical Society. They can have the same people make the statue, and it would be a great honor to have Frederick Douglass in Portland. In Portland. And I would like to see that happen. And I'm going to call out my good friend Jordan Snitzer to make a few phone calls also to New Bedford and see if we can't get this put together. Because I know the county's not going to help me.
Thank
You
you.
just ran me off my property and tried to have me killed and set up by Multnomah with the Klan History County River Patrol.
Thank you.
Don't forget your history. Never forget your history. I don't, and I'm not part of your history.
Thank you. Okay, I would invite you to come back up, Eric and Carrie, and we will go to the board for any questions or comments. And we will start with Commissioner Singleton. I know, we're mixing it up today.
They all like to mention the Klan, isn't that funny?
Thank you all. I don't have any questions. I appreciate you coming back with this presentation. The voters were very clear in this measure and wanting this to move forward, so I appreciate the work, and also that folks have said we've served for a long time and we're ready to look for some new folks to come on to that. So we look forward to helping with recruitment and pushing that out when the time comes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Brim Edwards.
No questions. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Jones Dixon.
No questions here, either. Thank you again for your leadership.
Commissioner Moyer.
No questions.
Okay. I don't have any questions either. We've gone through this and each time the levy has been updated, and I will look forward to working with you, and I'm sure this board as well, as we find folks to continue the good oversight that the community has done on this levy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Tasia, can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Moyer?
Yes.
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Brim Edwards?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones Dixon?
Yes.
Chair Baker Peterson?
Yes, the ordinance is adopted. Oh, I'm sorry, that was R2. This one is the agreement is adopted.
R2, second reading of ordinance establishing safe school zones in Multnomah County, Oregon.
May I have a motion?
Second.
Commissioner Brim Edwards moves. Commissioner Moyer seconds. Approval of R2. All right, so this is our third, it's our second reading of an amended ordinance that we heard last week. I will turn it over to District 3 and District 1 to introduce the item.
Right. We're back yet again for the second reading of the amended ordinance establishing a safe school zone related to the distribution of needle exchange. And I won't belabor the conversation because we've had lots of this, but again, I'll reiterate the desire to strike an appropriate balance between two vulnerable communities and to clarify as clearly as I can that Multnomah County does believe in harm reduction and will continue to support harm reduction efforts, including needle exchange, in order to protect the public health of our region. while acknowledging that there are some areas in which this activity may cause harm, particularly related to the presence of young children and the risks associated with things such as undisposed needles, activity that may not be age appropriate, and in an attempt to strike a balance. I will remind everybody that this is a stopgap measure with the full belief and support of the Oregon Legislature taking on this issue, which is the health licensing entity and a more appropriate place to do this level of enforcement, and that we are doing this as a way of bridging a community concern with that ultimate state level action. Thank you.
Great. Good morning, colleagues. So this is the continued second reading of the Safe School Zones Ordinance that Commissioner Moyer and I brought forward. It sets an important community standard that promotes student safety in the areas adjacent to schools and that will serve as a bridge to state action. With the enactment of this ordinance, we would be setting a very important community standard. As a mom, I know that this is a reasonable and important standard to set so that kids can walk to school safely. We're stating clearly that in Multnomah County, mobile syringe operators are prohibited from distributing syringes within 1,000 feet of a school. You know, families should feel confident that schools and routes to school remain safe and welcoming places for students, and kids should not have to be walking through needles being distributed or use needle debris to get to school. I want to thank all the parents, school districts, local businesses, and city leaders who supported and have helped us set this community common sense standard. Just as a recap, we used the state legislation as a framework, and I want to thank the colleagues. We had a briefing and work session on May 7th. And then subsequently a first reading on the 21st. 2 amendments were adopted, one adding a sunset, which I think is an important indicator to the legislature that we expect them to be setting a state standard, which is more appropriate than just a single county setting a standard. And we also removed the local public health authority since we're using home rule authority to establish policies. It should be noted also that there was public testimony and also discussion across the board about funding for the enforcement. And in the early morning hours of June 5th, the commission unanimously approved $159,800 for enforcement of the Safe School Zones Ordinance in the budget. And then subsequently, on the 11th, we had another second reading where 2 more amendments were adopted. One creating a narrow, limited-term emergency exemption for some service programs to operate out of a mobile site adjacent to the permanent facility. And then we also added the addition of the enforcement date of August 24th to allow the health department time to get the infrastructure in place. I want to, just as we wrap up here and have our sort of final discussion, thank Senator Lisa Reynolds for identifying that the county potentially could serve as a bridge and working with us as we put this into place. So thank you to Senator Reynolds. Really also a thank you to all the community members, organizations, local businesses who came multiple times to this commission meeting to share sort of their experiences and to help us, I think, set a really reasonable standard. Also appreciate that this, the majority of school districts within Multnomah County stepped up and said this was an important ordinance for us and standard for us to set. I want to thank the county attorney and the health department for helping us craft the ordinance, and for the health department setting up a framework for enforcement so that we not only have the standard on our books, but we also have the sort of the framework and the ability to notify people about the new standard, but also set the enforcement. Of course, I want to thank my staff for doing a lot of the legwork and working with Senator Reynolds and others and the community members on the drafting of this. And I want to thank my colleagues for making some important changes to the ordinance so that we have something that is not only a clear standard, but also is enforceable and that we can ensure that, ultimately the goal of kids having a safe way to get to school is in place in Multnomah County. And I look forward to advancing this policy today. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so do we have public testimony on this item, Tasia?
Yes. We have 7 people signed up to give public testimony.
All right.
We'll start with virtual testimony. Let's see. We have 1 person signed up, Vicky Payne. I don't see that she's joined the meeting, so we'll go to in-person testimony. We have first up, Cara Shane Coley, Michelle Mila, Siada Thompson, and Tiana Tozer.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for being here. If you're ready, you can go ahead and begin.
Is that good? Hi, my name is Cara Shane Colley. I'm a board member of Friends of Cooch Park. Week after week, I've listened to testimony about this ordinance, and I believe that the harm reduction providers who have spoken against this ordinance, I believe they have tunnel vision. They speak quite passionately about the needs of people with substance use disorder, who are indeed a vulnerable population. But what the PPOP volunteers refuse to do is look up and look around at the community around them. I have not heard a single harm reduction provider acknowledge that children are also a vulnerable population. People with substance use disorder are deserving of respect and dignity and care, but so are children. 2 weeks ago, I heard a person in recovery testify that this ordinance is stigmatizing. Drug laws in the state of Oregon prohibit and penalize drug dealing within 1,000 feet of a school. Are those laws stigmatizing too? Those laws are common sense, and this ordinance is too. As a community, we've decided with our laws that children deserve protection around their schools. 2 years ago, when Friends of Cooch Park first started working on this, a fellow board member of mine at Friends of Cooch Park went down to a Friday night PPOP handout at West Burnside and 19th near the McDonald's. He talked to PPOP volunteers and he pointed to Cathedral School and said, "Do you realize you're handing out needles 500 feet from a school?" And the PPOP volunteers didn't care. They said, "This is our right, we care about these people." They didn't want to hear what he has to say. He then moved on to talk to one of the drug users who was accepting needles at this handout. He said, "Look, you're getting needles 500 feet from a school." And the drug user said, "Oh my gosh, what? We're next to a school? We don't need to be here. We can go somewhere else." So the drug user was willing to move 1,000 feet away from a school. It's the PPOP volunteers who were unwilling to do that. I thank Commissioner Brim Edwards and Commissioner Moyer for their work and their leadership on this issue. I urge you all to vote yes.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Michelle Milla. I am Chair of Stadium Hood Neighbors in Northwest Portland, and I want to begin by thanking Commissioners Moyer and Brim Edwards for bringing this ordinance forward, and everyone who has participated in this thoughtful and substantive public discussion. Over the last year, we've talked a lot about whether location matters, and I think this ordinance answers yes, and that our children do deserve protections in these communities. And so today, I also want to kind of begin asking, how do we move from boundaries to accountability if this goes forward today? First, the current draft allows a public body, yourselves, to approve a mobile syringe program within a school zone, but it doesn't explain what standards guide those decisions yet and how they will be documented or how neighborhoods will be notified. A school zone boundary is visible, and good governance requires both acknowledging that boundary and also talking about what is in the realm of exemptions very clearly. Second, the ordinance creates an enforcement pathway, but it remains largely complaint-driven. Over the last couple of years, we've served as the primary documentation system for these activities. My neighbors and I have a durable accountability framework, and we shouldn't have to keep being the ones to bring these kinds of issues forward. And finally, the sunset clause, it raises one last question. If this ordinance is a bridge to a stronger statewide framework, then what happens when it expires in January of 2028? We'd like to ask for consideration that the clause is tied to a bill that comes from the state. The ordinance is an important step forward, and but a boundary alone is not accountability. Accountability requires transparency, and thank you for your consideration and work on this.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Ciata Thompson, and I'm a District 1 resident. Today, you'll hear a lot about where syringe distribution should occur. I'd like to ask a different question. How will we know any of this is actually working? The circumstances that originally justified widespread syringe distribution no longer exist. The HIV crisis of the 1980s and the 1990s was a public health emergency unlike anything we have seen before. Today, HIV is a manageable chronic condition for many people, and we have far more tools available than simply distributing syringes. Policies created decades ago should not be immune from reevaluation. Today, we measure inputs. We count the number of syringes, supplies handed out, and outreach encounters made. But we rarely measure whether people are actually getting better. How many entered treatment? How many completed treatment? How many found stable housing? How many are in long-term recovery? And how many overdoses were prevented because someone ultimately recovered? Those are the outcomes that matter. As I've said before, I support a complete ban on the mobile syringe distribution within school zones. If syringe services are going to continue, they should be integrated near hospitals, major medical facilities, treatment providers, places where people can get immediate access, healthcare, and recovery services. If the goal is recovery, what public interest is served by locating mobile syringe distribution near schools? Why not locate these services near healthcare, treatment, and recovery that already exist available somewhere else? But accountability is more than just location. It's about registration, it's about public reporting, it's about cleanup, it's about meaningful enforcement, and ultimately, it's about whether people recover. I am also concerned that these protections ultimately expire on January 1, 2028, regardless of whether a permanent statewide solution exists. Children should not lose protections simply because the calendar changed. There are organizations and political interests that have taken the city down a path where compassion is measured by how many supplies we hand out instead of how many lives are helped rebuild. Compassion without accountability is neglect. We measure how many syringes are distributed. We should also measure how many people leave addiction behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Do I turn this?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. My name is Tiana Tozer. I became disabled in 1988 at age 20 when I was run over by a drunk driver in Eugene. It took 34 reconstructive surgeries and 4 years of physical therapy for me to learn to walk again. In 1989, I was an intern for Congressman Stallings, a Democrat, in D.C., where I researched and advocated for the Americans with Disabilities Act. In addition, I recently sued the City of Portland for access to sidewalks under the Americans with Disabilities Act. I'm very familiar with it. I am here because I am appalled that people advocating for no restrictions on needle exchanges around schools have been stating that it would be an ADA violation. This is a lie. The ADA considers drug addiction an impairment and protected disability only for individuals in recovery. I'd like to repeat that sentence. The ADA considers drug addiction an impairment and protected disability only for individuals in recovery. I highly doubt, and common sense tells us, that addicts availing themselves of needle exchange service are in recovery. The specific citations governing drug addiction under the ADA are found in Title 42 of the United States Code 12114A. The exception for those with a history of addiction or in treatment is found in Title 42 of the United States Code 12114B. People with disabilities are the largest minority in the city of Portland. We make up 12%. Yet we have repeatedly been treated as third-class citizens, with both the city and the county failing to protect our hard-won mobility by allowing camping on the sidewalks and handing out tents. As a person with a disability, I refuse to stand by and let people with disabilities be an excuse for why we can't protect our children. Children who live here have been exposed to things that they shouldn't have been, things that in all my life that I didn't see until I came to Portland as an adult. We have failed them. You have failed them. Establishing a 1,000-foot safety zone around K-12 schools, effectively banning mobile syringe services within that radius, is the least you can do. Our children deserve a childhood. Who are we as a community if we don't prioritize their safety? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Karen Chire.
Good morning. My name is Karen Chire. I am a member of Stadium Hood and a business owner in District 1. And I'm writing to express my support for the proposed ordinance to establish safe school zones in Multnomah County. Prohibiting mobile syringe service programs within 1,000 feet of schools is a reasonable and necessary step to balance the interests of public health with the safety and educational environment of our children. While this ordinance is a critical first step, we have an opportunity to make it even more effective. The current Multnomah County draft focuses primarily on the location of mobile SSPs. To make our ordinance better, we should, oh my gosh, sorry, I gotta go back.
Okay, go ahead, take your time.
I wanted to tell you, I connected with a business owner in San Francisco because they're dealing with the same thing. And he's gone out and documented the mobile syringe services in the Tenderloin area of San Francisco and for years. And it's the same thing, a nondescript white van that comes into the neighborhood and hands out needles and drug paraphernalia. And recently he had posted about a 17-year-old going up to the table and getting some drug paraphernalia, a pipe and stuff from these people, not even asking question about how old he is or anything like that. And that's my concern around here too, is that these PPOP people, or there's a couple other organizations that do it too, but are handing out around schools, but also potentially handing it out to kids. And so he actually helped implement a executive order that the mayor had put out, basically what we're doing here with our ordinance. And I have a copy of it here. I was gonna email all of you guys just so that you could see. I know today you'll probably end up voting on this and stuff, but potentially we can revamp it in the future, or even add it to the state legislative when we get there. But I guess my main concern kind of with this one is that we're only focusing on syringes, but I really feel like handing out the drug paraphernalia and then not implementing any kind of drug addiction treatment documentation, pamphlets, getting these people help, which is what the mobile people do or don't do is concerning, and we don't have that written in this ordinance at all. So I think requiring that of them would be beneficial. So sorry, I messed up on my testimony, but thank you.
No, you did great. And if you wanted to share any written remarks,
I'm just going to email all of you guys.
That's perfect. Thank you.
That's all for testimony.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So we'll open it up to the board for any comments on this issue. We'll start with Commissioner Brum-Edwards.
So I've already said some framing comments about this community standard. I think I would like to perhaps respond to the question about the concern about a sunset. So when we embarked on this, as people may recall, when we had our first meetings, we had a bipartisan group of legislators come and express their support for this. For many reasons, I believe the state is the appropriate agent and jurisdiction to set the standard. And I believe the commitment, again, from a pretty broad, diverse group of legislators, that this was a priority, that they will take it up in the next session. I think we've done some important work to sort of elevate some issues that they can take into consideration when they're creating their prohibition. And I also would say is, I think it is important that we tell the legislature that it's our expectation that they're going to set a standard. Obviously, we can always change an ordinance if that's necessary, but I think for now, it's the sunset is not just right around the corner. We've also we'll have a setting up an enforcement mechanism and have funded it. So it's not going to be just a sort of flimsy bridge. It'll be a strong bridge, but I think we need to set the expectation that the state needs to take action. We did it in this particular case because they failed to. However, they ultimately should be the jurisdiction that does that. And so I think this sends a message to the legislature. It's like we've set up a bridge. Now it's your turn to actually set the state framework. You have more resources, and it shouldn't just be, frankly, a protection that students and families have in Multnomah County, but it should be a statewide standard. And again, I appreciate the other issues that were raised. I think that the question about the exemption, we obviously the commission will be paying attention to what sort of rules get promulgated around any exemptions, and frankly, can weigh in on that. And I think we've been pretty clear about the spirit of this ordinance is, and I don't expect any sort of rulemaking or exemptions to be contrary to sort of the spirit or the letter of the ordinance.
Thank you, Commissioner. Tasia did share that we had the person who was signed up for virtual was able to join. So we're going to hear the last testimony.
Hello, Vicki. You can unmute yourself and begin your testimony.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not sure why the video is not working. Just really quickly, I don't have a prepared speech, but my name is Vicki Payne. I'm speaking on my personal behalf as well as on behalf of Future Portland Action Fund and Future Portland Community Coalition. I just want to say that we support, or we would like to see the sunset clause be connected to the fact that the state actually passes something. There's no guarantee that the state will pass something, as others have mentioned. But then more importantly, from the testimony from the last meeting, from the people who were opposed to this, I would like to see the county board support the state defining what mobile distribution means, because we heard several people say that it was a bad thing that these people couldn't show up in the same exact spot week after week after week. And on the other breath, we hear people saying we need to meet people where they're at. So to me, mobile distribution means they should be driving around and finding groups of people using drugs, not creating a scenario where people are coming to use drugs in a certain spot. And again, like I've testified before, this doesn't happen at established organizations that are handing out harm reduction. So I would encourage you to push the state legislature for that in your, whatever you guys call that next year. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll go to continue on, Commissioner Jones-Dixon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioners Brim-Edwards and Commissioner Moyer, for your leadership in bringing this forward, and thank you for fielding all the questions from the board. Like I said, it's a start. So I will be supportive of as it's written, but also, like I said, just want to challenge us to continue to convene and bring everyone together to figure out how do we serve our most vulnerable here within the community. So thank you again.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Moyer.
I don't have any questions.
No questions, no comments. Got it. Commissioner Singleton.
I'm good.
Thank you all. I think this board has made it clear that the safety of children is important, and I appreciate the work to get to the amendments that needed to happen in this ordinance to deal with some of the specific situations that we were seeing. I also just want to appreciate our legislator, Senator Reynolds, I know has been a leader in championing this, and there was other state elected officials as well, looking at what they will do in the next session, and I would assume that this will be part of what we would want to see on our legislative agenda for our state action. I think it's important to just reiterate what I said last time, that this work doesn't just stop here. So my team, at least in District 2 and District 1 in coordination with Commissioner Moyer, are looking at opportunities to site some more SHARPS collection boxes, because the issue of where to dispose needles is still a problem. And I know we've got a hot spot that keeps coming up in District 2, and similarly, this spot and location in Stadium HUD keeps coming up for District 1. Not that others aren't welcome to do that as well. It was just the two hot spots that have come up. And I happen to have an amazing chief of staff who was leading this work at Metro and knows exactly where the SHARP boxes are, how much they cost, so can kind of help us streamline this. And additionally, some city council colleagues in District 2 are leaning into that. So we're happy to share with other districts as that work moves forward, and if there's a really clean process for y'all to follow.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I will say this is something that the county has leaned in on before. I worked on getting additional SHARPS container receptacles several years ago when I was a commissioner, and I think that it's always good to check in what the need is and then continue our partnerships with Metro and the waste disposal in the city of Portland on that. So thank you for taking that on. I want to just start off by thanking Commissioner Brim-Edwards and Commissioner Moyer for their leadership on this issue of taking this up. I really have appreciated the work that this board has done to add some amendments to make sure that this was both something that would meet the needs that we currently have in the community as we're waiting for the state legislature to take further action on this item, and make sure that it was something that we as Multnomah County were able to implement and really be able to fulfill, you know, what we're doing with this board action today and the follow through and the implementation of it. So just want to say that I think that this is a good step forward, and we'll you know, definitely like to see this as part of our legislative agenda with the state. All right, Tasia.
Chair, I just have one additional comment. On the needle collection, I think it would be important for the county commission not just to have say we should have more collection sites, but we also should be looking at the data because of what the county supports has in terms of just needle distribution, and Often, these are described as exchanges, but the data doesn't actually show that there's a one-to-one exchange or even close. So in addition to having additional receptacles, I think we should be looking at upstream to how many, there's a clearinghouse that distributes millions of needles, and like what is the responsibility of those who are distributing them, not just we're going to put more receptacles out to collect them, because it's not it's in no way an exchange. It's the county does better, their data is better than most other entities that has distributed needles, at least from what I've seen. But that's a place to go upstream versus counting on we just put more boxes out, and that will lead to greater returns.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, and I will say that, Multnomah County has had a long history of harm reduction practices for at least 30 years. And we know that harm reduction saves lives, prevents the spread of disease, and benefits our entire community. And we take that obligation seriously as the local public health authority. So as we work on this issue, I think that that's important to keep in mind and work with our public health department on how we implement this as we move forward with any of the policies around this.
Chair, I feel like I just want to say that part of the reason for moving forward with the boxes is because it was clearly stated during our multiple sessions on this that the needle debris continues despite PPOP not operating in certain areas. So there's clearly a need, and I think that that is an important step to take. Not that it's one or the other, but I don't want us to lose sight of there's currently an issue, and I've got an issue in my district, so that's why we're focusing on those areas.
Thank you. All right, Tasia, can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Bryn Edwards?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
Yes.
Commissioner Moyer?
Yes.
Chair Vega-Peterson?
Aye, the ordinance is adopted.
R3, adopting a population emergency release plan for the Department of Community Justice Juvenile Services Division facilities to be implemented in accordance with ORS 419A.055 in the event that the maximum capacity of the juvenile detention facility is exceeded.
May I have a motion? Commissioner Singleton moves, Commissioner Jones-Dixon seconds approval of R3. So the next item is a resolution to adopt a population emergency release plan for the Juvenile Services Division in DCJ in the event that the maximum capacity of the juvenile detention facility is exceeded. I want to thank the department for bringing this forward, Director Pena and Dr. Armstrong Romero, and for continuing to do what is best for the youth in our community. I'm going to turn it over to you to present.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair Vega-Peterson and fellow county commissioners. My name is Denise Pena. I am the Director of the Department of Community Justice, or DCJ, and I use she and her pronouns. Thank you for the time today for us to review the proposed population emergency release plan for DCJ's Juvenile Justice Division. We're bringing this to the board for approval to ensure that the county's compliance with state statute and the department's ability to maintain safe conditions for all the youth detained, which we'll review in more detail. Adopting this plan provides the county with legal immunity from civil and criminal liabilities regarding any resulting releases. This plan will implement in accordance with ORS 419A.055 in the event that the maximum capacity of the juvenile detention facility is exceeded. We are seeking approval today to ensure the county is prepared to manage capacity issues while maintaining the protection of statutory immunity. Next slide, please. We're going to start off by providing context for why the population emergency release plan is necessary in line with juvenile detention capacity, which has reduced in recent years with the reduction of metro region contracts. We'll then provide a review of the emergency release process and walk through some potential release scenarios. We welcome your questions throughout our presentation, or we can have them at the end. And now I am going to hand it over to Dr. Kyla Armstrong Romero, our juvenile justice, our juvenile division director, to go over over the plan in more depth. And before I do that, Kyla, I'm sorry, I also just want to acknowledge that in the room, we have Suzanne Brown McBride, our Deputy Director, Michaela Thurman, our Policy Communication Manager, but we also have the senior leadership team of our Juvenile Services Division. So behind me, we have James Hartman, Sylvia Gomez, and Ansley Flores, and I thank them for their work.
And we also have Eric Zimmerman, the DA, the Juvenile DDA. Good morning. It is morning still. My name is Chair and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Dr. Kyla Armstrong Romero. I am the Juvenile Services Division Director. I use she, her pronouns, and thank you, Denise. The Juvenile Services Division provides juvenile detention, diversion, informal services, pre-adjudication support, and community supervision. To understand why we are presenting this today as an immediate need, we must look at a significant regional shift in juvenile detention capacity and usage. In the early 1990s, the metro region, comprising of Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas counties, collaborated to build the new juvenile justice complex in the 90s. For decades, this facility successfully housed youth from all 3 jurisdictions. However, that regional model has ended. Due to fiscal constraints, Clackamas County concluded its contract with Multnomah County in FY24, followed by Washington County in FY25. The immediate impact is clear. While our total regional capacity has dropped significantly due to these contract terminations, our Multnomah County youth occupancy has fluctuated sharply. And for the first time in many, many, many years, we've reached our maximum capacity earlier this year in January and again in March. To effectively manage our resources and ensure the safety of youth in our care, we're coming to the board with a proposed resolution to adopt a population emergency release plan for the juvenile detention facility. JSD currently has a capacity management policy in place to facilitate emergency releases, which will be updated according to this adopted resolution. While this policy was previously authorized by a presiding judge's order 2009, a recent review by the current presiding judge and the county attorney determined that the jurisdiction for approving such a plan sits directly with the county court, defined here as the Board of County Commissioners. This is established under Oregon Statute ORS 174.100, which provides the legal basis for the board to establish capacity limits and set emergency release standards for local juvenile detention facilities. We are proposing the adoption of this capacity management plan pursuant to ORS 419A.055 to safely manage situations where the number of youth in detention exceeds our operational capacity. If adopted, this resolution will formally establish the population limit for the Multnomah County Juvenile Detention System, located at the Donald E. Long Juvenile Detention Center at the annual adopted budget funding level. This is outlined in the FY27 adopted budget program offer 50054. Next slide, please. So who do we serve? The Donald E. Long Juvenile Detention Facility is one of 11 youth detention facilities in the state of Oregon. It is structurally and programmatically designed as a short-term facility to hold youth while they move through juvenile court proceedings. Based on our current FY27 budget allocation, our facility is staffed for a total capacity of 36 beds, which are allocated as 29 beds for Multnomah County youth and 7 beds reserved for other required holds. Our facility serves youth brought into detention by local law enforcement within Multnomah County. Because the juvenile court is co-located within the detention facility, the Sheriff's Office is able to safely provide internal transfers from detention directly up to the courts. In addition to Multnomah County youth, we are legally required to hold under the Interstate Compact, mutual aid agreements, out-of-state runaways, and Oregon Youth Authority sanctioned youth. Next slide, please. This timeline illustrates how our juvenile detention bed capacity has decreased in recent fiscal years as a direct result of the contract reductions that I mentioned. As noted, Donald E. Long historically provided services for the entire metro region. Clackamas County previously funded 13 beds, later reduced to 8, and Washington County funded 17 beds, later reduced to 11 in FY '24 and '25. Both contracts operated on a fixed fee, regardless of actual daily usage. These contracts were critical because they allowed us to sustain staffing levels that could absorb population fluctuations across all jurisdictions. Without that external funding, we could no longer sustain those staffing levels, and we had to reduce our personnel accordingly. As you can see on the slide, we went from a regional capacity of 62 beds in FY '21 down to our current capacity of 36 beds in FY '26, focusing strictly on Multnomah County and other statutory requirements that I mentioned earlier. During the FY '26 budget cycle, we adapted our operations to mirror these changes, reducing our detention staffing from 60 FTE to approximately 52 to maintain the 36-bed capacity. The FY '27 adopted budget funds juvenile detention at the same staffing level at just over $10 million. This is funded by 80% of the county general fund, with the remaining 20% supported by Oregon Youth Authority juvenile crime prevention funds. Next slide, please. When determining our detention staffing levels, several non-negotiable factors must be balanced. First and foremost, our priority is facility safety for both staff and youth in our care. These safety and operational requirements are outlined in ORS. Additionally, our Local 88-6 collective bargaining agreement requires a minimum of 2 juvenile custody services specialists per unit during waking hours. Furthermore, Federal Prison Rape Elimination Act, PREA, standards mandate a strict 1-to-8 staffing ratio of specialists to youth. Adequate staffing is vital to prevent burnout and ensure existing staff can perform their duties effectively. This creates a healthier work environment, which is essential for attracting and retaining quality professionals in a 24/7 environment. We remain deeply committed to ensuring youth receive trauma-informed and evidence-based support, and studies show that youth in well-supervised positive environments are less likely to reoffend. Maintaining a proper staffing ratio allows for restorative practices aligning with our FY '27 goal for all youth to engage in pro-social, educational, and rehabilitative activities, a commitment recently recognized by the Corrections Grand Jury Report. Finally, our capacity must accommodate what I call logistical chess. We are required to facilitate strict pod separation and specialized staffing based on co-defendant status, gang affiliation, gender identity, age, and medical necessity. Because of these rigid separation needs, there are instances where our pod design forces us to open an unbudgeted overflow pod to maintain compliance, which immediately triggers a need for on-call staffing that is not built into our base budget. I'd also like to underline that beginning in FY '22, the county supported the renovation of 2 juvenile detention pods to meet current correctional standards for safe trauma-informed detention housing that were completed in December of '25. Overflow pods have not been renovated to meet these standards. Next slide, please. This graph tracks the average daily population for Multnomah County youth only over the last 5 fiscal years, including FY '26 to date. While our historical average sits comfortably below our maximum capacity for Multnomah County of 29 youth, the population has been steadily rising during the current fiscal year. In fact, on 3 separate occasions this past March, our facility exceeded its local capacity based on the specific composition of youth in custody, which required immediate capacity management planning. A major driver of this strain is the length of stay, which we underlined during our FY '27 budget presentation to the board. While detention is designed as a short-term holding facility, we are seeing an unprecedented increase in youth held for over 500 days as they await trial or waivers to adult court. Currently, 25% of our average daily population falls into that long-term category. The long-term stay, coupled with the increasingly complex behavioral and mental health needs of youth in detention, is placing a massive strain on our mental health, educational, and physical resources. These conditions underscore exactly why a formalized emergency release plan is necessary to ensure required resources are aligned to meet the needs of the youth who must remain in our care. Next slide, please. There's a direct correlation between exceeding our bed capacity and spikes in staff overtime. Overtime is heavily driven by the logistical chest that I mentioned. When the population exceeds static pod limits, we are forced to open overflow pods to maintain mandated separation standards, again for co-defendants, gang affiliations, gender, medical necessity needs. And this requires bringing in on-call juvenile custody services specialists and/or overtime. These on-call and overtime costs are not funded in DCJ's base budget. Historically, we've managed these spikes using salary savings from vacant positions. However, following intentional efforts to fully support our 24/7 facility, we are now fully staffed in our specialist classifications. Our specialist classifications, we have 38 total JCSS, and we are currently staffed to 35 with 3 vacancies. Like our colleagues in the sheriff's office, we know these 24/7 custody roles are incredibly difficult to recruit and retain, making the commitment to adequate staffing to help avoid staff burnout a top operational priority. Looking at this slide, you can see the direct impact from March 2026, when our average daily population peaked at 26.5 and we breached our local 29 youth capacity on 3 occasions. The facility required over 800 hours of staff overtime in a single month just to maintain safety and statutory compliance. One example I'd like to elevate is that we have a very complex youth in our facility currently, and although our capacity is under the Multnomah County capacity, our overtime hours are quite a bit because the staffing for this medically fragile youth requires 2 staff at all hours. This brings us to the operational implementation of the Population Emergency Release Plan. Next slide, please. If this resolution is adopted, a population emergency would be formally declared under 2 primary conditions. When the current facility population exceeds our operational capacity, or when an emergency event, such as a health or structural hazard, renders specific zones of the facility uninhabitable. To preserve public safety, the plan uses a strict risk-based prioritization model for bed allocation. Beds are strictly reserved for the highest risk youth, specifically those facing violent charges or allegations under ORS 137.707, which are the Measure 11 SB 1008 allegations. Release priority for lower risk youth is governed by clear objective criteria: the nature of the current allegation, the youth score on the detention screening instrument, the DSI, their history of failures to appear, FTA, or escapes, and statutory requirements under 419C145. Any youth released under this emergency policy must have a release agreement on file. The plan mandates that the presiding court, district court attorney, and defense counsel are immediately notified of the emergency and any subsequent emergency releases. Furthermore, close coordination with the district attorney's office is required for every release to ensure full compliance with constitutional victim notification rights. Let's look at 3 practical scenarios to see how this risk-based model applies in real time. Next slide, please. Every youth admitted to juvenile detention is paired with a juvenile court counselor, a JCC, who assists the youth and family through the pre-adjudication process. Crucially, the JCC establishes an early release plan at intake, which directly informs potential emergency releases. Scenario A represents a case that would be eligible for an emergency release. Eligible individuals are low risk, such as youth held on technical probation violations, so court-ordered sanctions of 1 to 8 days, with no violent history and a stable home environment. In this example, the youth was admitted solely on a technical probation violation petition with no violent charges. The DSI applied at intake indicated a low classification score of 4. Under the proposed plan, this youth would be prioritized and deemed eligible for emergency release to manage facility capacity safely. Next slide, please. Scenario B outlines a case involving a mandatory hold, making the youth automatically ineligible for emergency release. Mandatory holds include individuals charged with firearm offenses under ORS 166.250, which triggers an automatic hold override that exempts them from release consideration regardless of their baseline screening scores. In this scenario, a youth is brought in by law enforcement on an outstanding warrant for an unlawful possession of a firearm. Even though their baseline DSI score is a 6 that could be considered for release, the firearm charge triggers an automatic, immediate, mandatory hold. Under this policy, an emergency release cannot and will not be authorized for this youth without an explicit signed order from a judge. The youth must remain securely detained. Next slide, please. Scenario C addresses a social preclusion, where an emergency release cannot be authorized because a safe community placement does not exist. This occurs if there are no available shelter beds or if a parent or guardian actively refuses to receive the youth at home. Releases in these specific instances are precluded to prevent youth homelessness or unsafe living conditions, which trigger a mandatory 36-hour hold override. In this scenario, the youth has a DSI score of 6 and a JCP score of 19. However, the parents refuse to take custody or assume responsibility, and the staff are unable to secure an open shelter placement. Because releasing the youth to the street is unsafe, an emergency release cannot be authorized and the youth will remain securely in our care while alternative options are sought. Next slide, please. In summary, this matrix highlights how the proposed plan utilizes a strict, objective, risk-based prioritization model by combining individual case circumstances with detention screening scores, escape histories, failure to appear records, etc. We can clearly identify which youth can be safely considered for emergency release or early release, and which youth are automatically ineligible due to mandatory holds or social preclusions. In the event of a population emergency, every single potential emergency release will undergo this individualized review process to ensure public safety, victim safety, and legal compliance. Next slide, please. This concludes our overview of the proposed population emergency release plan. We are happy to answer any questions the board may have. Thank you for having us today.
Thank you so much, Kyla and Denise. Tasia, did we receive any public testimony on this item?
Yes, we have one person signed up.
Okay. If you guys wouldn't mind sitting back, and then we'll call you forward for board questions.
Lightning.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Superhumanity AI Fund for Everyone Lab. A couple of concerns I had is it was stated that some people in this detention center were held close to 500 days. What does the policy state on that? And when you're talking these releases, do you have a place to release them to is my biggest concern. And you've stated shelters and various things like that, which obviously we're cutting funding for a tremendous amount of shelters. And again, my question is, I would like to review your audits on this facility, and where would I obtain those audits and from who? And again, my question to the commissioners and the chair, I assume you've all walked through this facility in the last 6 months, I'm hoping, to really get a clear understanding on what we have there. And maybe my biggest concern is always overlooking the complaint system, especially if you're a juvenile and you've been accused of something and you're being held. Are they obviously making complaints, and where do those complaints go to, and who's overlooking those complaints? And again, just how much overtime are we spending at this facility? And again, it appeared that Washington County and Clackamas County were providing a tremendous amount of funding and securing beds. It almost seemed like they were utilizing this more than Multnomah County was in Metro, which I find kind of alarming. Why would that even be? Don't they have their own facilities set up in their locations? And now you're talking about overcapacity here. So I guess for me to really have a clear understanding, which I don't have the authority to do and you do, is to walk through the facility, to overlook all the complaints that have ever been filed, at least in the last 12 months, and to have an understanding how many people have been in there up to 500 days. That's well over a year in a detention center as a juvenile. That can pretty much set in motion how you might end up accomplishing things in the future in the communities, in the neighborhoods. If you're in a detention center that long, 500 days as a juvenile. So I'm just a little bit concerned about the juveniles, the audits, and the complaint process and who's handling that. And again, as you know, I don't trust the Sheriff's Department at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'll invite Kyla and Denise back up to the dais, and we'll go to the board for questions and comments. We'll start with Commissioner Jones-Dixon.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dr. Armstrong-Romero, for the presentation, and Director Pena as well. I'm just curious. I'm supportive of the resolution and of the work and the actual plan. So thank you for walking us through that. Really curious if, Mr. Zimmerman, if you had any feedback on just what's been presented or just the level of engagement with the DA's office, if you could just share more. Yeah.
It's always fun to get called up when you're not expecting to speak.
Or we can bring the mic to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. There has been...
Would you mind stating your name for the record?
Oh, sorry. Eric Zimmerman with the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, currently the Senior Deputy District Attorney at the Juvenile Division. In looking at those numbers that Dr. Armstrong-Romero is referencing, when we were close to capacity, our office was able to collaborate with the Juvenile Service Department and with the Oregon Youth Authority in moving a lot of those youth that were charged with higher level crimes that had also been previously committed to the Oregon Youth Authority. We were able to come up with a creative resolution to not have to have any matrix style releases. I felt that the Juvenile Department in that respect did collaborate with my office and did ask for our opinions, and just looking over the list of youth that were in detention currently, we were able to then triage people that had other places to go, namely Oregon Youth Authority, and get them out of our local detention. 500 days in detention is ridiculous for a youth. And we've been working really hard to move along a lot of those waiver cases to try and not have that be an issue anymore. So that's been my goal since heading out there in November, is to speed that process up.
Do you have any feedback regarding the resolution that's...
Yeah, I mean, as long as, so our office, as you know, have a constitutional obligation to the victims in these crimes to let them know before any release decision is made, whether it be judiciary or emergency. So I think if, as long as the juvenile department continues to collaborate on those issues and consult, that I think that is, and then we have an opportunity to reach out to the victims, then I think that is, it's fine.
Great. It looks like Dr. Armstrong.
Thank you, Eric, for being here and for your comments on the collaboration. I want to uplift that we have not had to utilize our policy that we've had in place for many years. And so when Eric came on board into his role in November, there was a backlog in the DA's office with juvenile cases that we weren't quite aware of. And I think that helped to catapult the conversations about what this plan, this policy that we have in place, and we had the 2009 judge's order, if that was in fact correct and accurate, if we were to exceed capacity. And which prompted our chief family law judge, Henry, in January to review the order that we had from 2009. And there are jurisdictional issues where statute requires the county court. And juvenile code is very interesting, and I'm not an attorney, but I think that there's been some confusion because the adult code is very, very specific as it pertains to forced release and emergency release or capacity management, as you all have seen with the sheriff's office in this conversation. Juvenile is not as specific. So I think that's where there's that confusion. And without a current county court, Board of County Commissioners authorization for us to have a plan, if we were to exceed capacity, there's risk. So I just wanted to, but we would follow the policy and we would follow the collaboration model that we've had in place before.
Great. Thank you. That answers my questions. So no further questions or concerns. Thank you both for just showing what does collaboration look like and then bringing this forward as well.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Commissioner Moyer.
I totally understand why you're coming before us and the very difficult position you are all in, and the requirements to obviously meet safety and capacity standards. I'm wondering, as we're thinking about the future, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I view this as a stopgap measure to probably a larger conversation we need to have about appropriate capacity and what is the reality of the cost of that. And, we have this conversation, obviously, with the sheriff around capacity, but I don't want us to make a decision on this and not have that conversation. So I want to, put in a placeholder that's something that I think we need to engage in before next budget so that we are making an informed decision about the staffing for DCJ juvenile detention and not ignore what I hope is not, but may be a trend that we just have to accommodate. Because, now we're floating, but we could be in a situation where we were consistently over. I hope that does not happen, obviously. I do appreciate Multnomah County has worked very hard to limit detention. And so who we detain, it is a serious conversation about releasing. This is not an MIP that it's not going to get you detained. We're talking about a different category of charges. So that's my placeholder, is that I would like to return to this conversation as a board and have some thoughts about, do we need to think about what our capacity actually needs to be? That obviously isn't the tool you need at this exact moment, and we can't probably revisit our budget at this point, please no. But yeah, so I put that in for wanting to have a future conversation so that we are planning accordingly.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Moyer. I would just also point out that in the resolution, there is a section where the board may issue additional orders or resolutions to carry out the functions as an authority granted to Multnomah County under 41A .00055. And so that is included in the resolution as well, that we can continue this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for the presentation and the responses so far. I'm going to apologize because normally I like to get you questions before I ask them up here, and I wasn't able to do that this week. So there may be things that you can't respond to now and maybe a longer-term conversation, but I too have a lot of agita about the length of time young people are staying in the detention center, and I'd be curious to know what state data looks like on average, if we're higher or lower, as well as national data. And that, of course, can come. I don't expect you to have data at the fingertips. There's one slide, sorry, these don't have slide numbers. I think it's slide 8. It is the budgeted capacity and overtime requirements. And I'm just trying to understand, how we are predicting like less overtime because of other reductions in staff, like less vacancies. Just how is this drop off happening? So that's pretty significant here.
I will start, and I'm sure that Dr. Armstrong-Romero will finish my thoughts for me, or with me. And so, Commissioner, when we find ourselves at that capacity, so I just kind of want to back up and uplift a little bit what Kyla said earlier, that the Juvenile Services Division had the authority to release with the capacity management plan when we had the PJO in place. So that is not new, but absent the PJO, with it being vacated, now we don't have anything, and that's what we're trying to do today. And so I just want to kind of make sure that that is sort of at the foundation. And so looking at the overtime, when we found ourselves in March on 3 separate occasions, at that point, the PJO had been vacated and we did not have the ability to release youth. And so that is where, at that point, we had to then have on-calls, and then with the overtime, having existing staff not being able to go home and remain on their shift so that we can make sure that we're in compliance with our staffing ratio, both in PREA and in our Local 86 contract.
Thank you. That's super helpful. I must have missed that in the comments. I don't need this now, but you use some acronyms in here that I don't know what they are, DSI, FTA. If you can share what that is, that would be great.
I apologize, we speak in acronyms.
Everybody does, and they're all different.
The DSI is the detention screening instrument. FTA is failure to appear. I also mentioned JCP, which is the juvenile crime prevention screening tool.
Thank you. What is the DSI scoring?
So the DSI scoring, we are required by there's statutes and rules that is guided by the detention guidelines that the Youth Development Oregon is authorized to do. And basically our tool is a scale of that measures various questions, and we can get you all a copy if we haven't, of what the questions are in order to respectively score the youth. So it's an adopted tool. We're all required, all 11 detention facilities across the state are required to utilize a tool that prioritizes release based on statutory criteria.
Thank you. I'd love to see that.
Absolutely.
There's a reference to shelter and releasing folks to shelter, and I just want to make sure, is this specific beds that you all have? Are we talking about emergency shelters? Just can you talk more about what that looks like? And part of why I ask is the youth shelter system has less capacity. It's not seeing reductions this year, but it does have a lot less shelter beds than the adult system.
Yeah, we're in a unique situation where we relied heavily upon our A&E program, which was the assessment and evaluation program. And with the termination of the contract from Washington County, we had to make some really hard decisions about where to reduce the revenue that we were receiving. And because we knew we had to hold certain youth for detention, we didn't make significant cuts to detention last year with the loss of that contract. And because of that, we lost A&E, and we relied heavily upon A&E for kind of that shelter short-term stay for youth, and it was in our facility, which was helpful. Other counties, for example, Washington County has Harkins House, which they're able to utilize in lieu of detention. They're able to use that as short-term placement. Some of the shelter beds and placement options that are available throughout the county for juveniles, I think there's certain criteria that our kids maybe may not meet. And so we have not found a lot of options. And so we are proactively looking at what contracts the county has and looking at like New Avenues for Youth and Parrot Creek, just to name a couple. But we've also been in conversations just as a whole about placement options. And the other complicating factor is that if a youth is a crossover youth, so they have both a juvenile delinquency case and a dependency case, child welfare, they have limited placement options as well. And so they've utilized their temporary lodging for many of our kids. And so we're able to work with our partners also to see what's out there. But honestly, here in Multnomah County for juvenile justice youth, the options are limited.
Thank you. I'll definitely want to talk more about this as follow-up. I think I would hope that you're talking with HSD and looking and working with all the shelter providers. I know you mentioned a few, because I think it's really important that we figure out how to leverage other existing services the county's already funding for this need as well. So I'd look forward to talking more about it, because I feel like there's a solve here that we can figure out pretty quickly. The other question was, you mentioned a forced release agreement. What is that?
So that is language that was adopted from the adult statute in consultation with the county attorney's office. But it's basically constitutes a release agreement. And we will provide you with the release agreement that every youth, regardless of emergency, the population crisis, they are required to review with a guardian or parent or caregiver of sorts that authorizes them to be released from detention. So it's the release agreement that we already have in place.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate, thank you, Commissioner, for sending this down. I'll take a look at this too. I'm just curious what it is. Yeah, this isn't an easy solve problem. I had some similar questions about what is Washington and Clackamas County doing with their youth then, because it seems like all I see on their websites are the shelter you mentioned and not necessarily a detention facility. So are we still, they're not funding, but are we still ending up with youth from other counties in this facility?
We end up with youth from other counties as like temporary holding or mutual aid, but specifically Clackamas and Washington, we're not holding them outside of a certain time frame. Those youth, when they terminated their contract with us, both Clackamas County and Washington County decided to utilize Marion County's detention. And one thing that's different about Multnomah County is that we have medical care So the partnership that we have with Corrections Health in our facility, we also have our own nutrition services team. Other facilities kind of staff differently, especially with mental health and medical needs, and so the costs associated look a bit different, and I think we've spoken to that in our prior
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Definitely we'll reach out to have some more conversation, but also to do some linkage with, I think I mentioned to you, Director Pena, the workforce table I had. The trades are very interested in figuring out how to get into this facility and start training young people for some of these apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs so we can give them some opportunity. So just appreciate the work you all do, and thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you. And DDA Zimmerman, you don't have to stay up here. I would appreciate you being up here. But oh, she did. Oh, well, okay. Well, then you stay. If you've been asked to, then I would definitely. I just didn't want you to feel obligated to. Commissioner Brim Edwards.
Thanks for the presentation today, and also for the turnaround of the questions I had for you all. I want to start by asking: has there been any public hearings or public discussions about the specific plan to date? Besides today?
So the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee is a faction of LIPSIC, and in the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee, we did have a conversation on March 10th. All of our meetings are public, and we've spoken about the capacity.
But not an opportunity for the commission to ask questions or there to be public comment on the plan? And was it on the specific plan?
It was on the capacity management.
Okay, so there hasn't, today's the first day. And I just want to note that from a governance standpoint, I did ask last week for us to separate today's discussion. And I think we've heard several questions of like, longer term, I'd like to hear this. Well, I think we actually should have the questions answered prior to us voting on something. I did ask that we separate the two, to have today as a work session, answer questions, we have the follow-ups taken care of, and then when we vote that we actually know what we're voting on. So when I'm done asking my questions, I'll have I'll have an amendment and also a motion. I'm going to start with my questions with what is the actual physical, and this is just for the record, what's the actual physical capacity, number of beds in the center?
So our detention facility is built on a 6-pod design, with each pod physically separated into 2 distinct units. So following extensive strategic changes, the housing footprint has been streamlined down to a specialized configuration of 66 total beds, inclusive of standard rooms, medical observation, and deep isolation spaces. And so, and the remaining square footage is entirely offline from housing and dedicated to other administrative use. So for the board's understanding, there was a certain amount of money, over $1 million, that was invested in the renovations for the detention facility. And with that amount of money, although we would have liked to see the entire facility renovated, we were able to renovate 2 pods. And those 2 pods are in use, and those are pods A and B. So those pods, those modernized units, feature 14 individual rooms per unit, one of which is ADA compliant, and then each unit includes a specialized medical observation room, and that's reserved for clinical monitoring, and those are excluded from our daily capacity metrics. So the total capacity in both pods A and B is 28 standard beds and 2 medical observation beds. Pod C is not renovated. It is a backup pod used for an emergency case. So an example that I used earlier about a youth who has fragile medical need and staffing, that would be a pod that youth can only be staffed by themselves on a unit. And so that would be the backup unit, which is pod C. Pod C is, there are 32 standard beds, 2 MOR beds, and 2 deep isolation beds, so 36 total beds. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so there's 66 beds, so setting a capacity at 36 is significantly below what the facility capacity is. And I think one of my first votes on the commission in 2022 or 2023 was on the funds to renovate and modernize the pods so that they were an appropriate place for youth. Okay, so we're significantly below, and the facility capacity. So one question I have is the way that the plan is worded. It's the very first sentence says that this is a plan for when it exceeds the capacity of the detention facilities, which is not quite accurate because it's not the actual facility, because what I understand from the answers I got is it's more the staffing capacity. Correct?
It's based on staffing capacity and the physical plant layout. So for example, if you have flooding in one pod, we can't use that pod.
So you're saying the staffing is not what's the governor of this, of why you're setting it lower?
Please, please.
I will attempt, Commissioner Brumetters. Thank you for the question. So we have a total of, this facility was built back in the 90s, where it was definitely meant to have many more youth than we have today, and even the last couple of years. And Kyla can speak to the trends and the effort that this county has made to reduce the juvenile population. But to your question, it is a total of 66 beds, and that's going to be between some of the remodeled pods and then some pods that are not remodeled. But if you had to look at the space, that would be the number. The 29 beds that we refer to with Multnomah County, that is the number that as a jurisdiction has been decided that is the number that'll serve the Multnomah County youth. That is what is listed in our program offer. And even when we have reduced the detention in terms of staffing, first when we lost Clackamas County and then Washington County, we never reduced Multnomah County's census of 29 youth. Does that answer your question a little bit better, I hope?
Right. Well, I just think it's somewhat misleading because it makes it sound like, and misleading is maybe the wrong, because that sounds intentional, but it's less about the facility, but more about what's been budgeted. Because I think what you said in the answer to some of my questions in previous years, because you were able to manage vacancies and other things, you could cover the overtime, but you don't have that now. And so it's more the budgeted capacity, and actually the first resolved is that the population limit is hereby set by the annual adopted budget funding level. So I just think we should be clear. It's not that we don't necessarily have enough space for that. So I also asked my questions about engagement with the presiding court, the district attorney, and defense counsel. And this goes also to my just question about sort of the larger public discussion versus everything happening in private discussions. It sounds like there was, with those entities, private notification of those three entities. You didn't mention defense counsel,
Yes.
but you said with the family law judge and also with the district attorney's office.
Yes.
Did either of them provide feedback on, did you ask for feedback on the plan?
Yes, so I have spoken with, in a one-on-one with Mr. Zimmerman, in my one-on-ones with the chief family law judge and the lead juvenile judge. We've spoken about it, and we are following we're following the policy that we have in place. So we're not changing our practice. What has changed is the fact that we no longer have a court order that authorizes, if we were in a situation, how we would execute our policy that we have. And I do just want to mention that the Annie E. Casey Foundation has invested a lot of money in Multnomah County in addition to a number of partnerships, a lot of time with our partners, including the district attorney's office, to ensure that we are not overutilizing detention. And so I think, back in the 90s, kids were labeled as super predators. I really hope that we don't go backwards, and we have done a lot of partnership in order to not utilize detention. And statute says that detention should be used in a least restrictive way.
Yeah, I'm not arguing for more detention. I grew up here, and that used to be a place where people who had minor impositions and curfew violations maybe ended up. That is not the case now, right? I mean, it's for individuals and youth that, in some cases, have very serious charges.
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
Commissioner, if I may just add to that, I just want to again uplift what Kyla said. The plan hasn't changed. It is just the mechanism in which we were able. And so when we've had the conversations, when I've had the conversations, it has been notifying them that now that the PJO has been vacated, we don't have anything in place. And then per consultation with County Council and per the Oregon statute, this is now the mechanism in which we can continue to manage capacity if we need to. I think the thing that is kind of bringing this up as perhaps a new thing is because we've never hit capacity before prior to March.
Right, and so that actually makes it all the more relevant, what the plan is, because a plan that was not utilized, or what the court order that wasn't utilized, maybe was less relevant to the community. So if it's actually going to be utilized, we should make sure that we have it right. And one of the concerns I have is an answer to one of the questions that I ask. There's a statement that this is to ensure public safety, which is like, yeah, I'm all for public safety. That's should be an important component. It certainly is for our adults. But in response, it says, the rationale for this, we want to underline that this resolution is being brought forward to provide the county with legal immunity from civil and criminal liability regarding any resulting releases. So it seems to be about protecting the county versus I'm looking for where are the protections for public safety and making sure that we have those built in. So So I am concerned, so even if this was the plan before that the presiding judge put out, or the court put out, that we're being asked to approve something that actually is going to be utilized and that we're going to be accountable for. I had asked whether there had been any formal consultation with victims and survivors. Again, most of the charges that are outlined here are quite serious. They're mostly person-to-person charges. So since it sounds like this is going to be utilized in the very near term, what consultation has happened with victims and survivors?
So I think it would be helpful to kind of walk through what this looks like, because one thing I want to make clear is that we will not release high-risk youth due to any capacity issue.
I think you made it clear in the presentation with the 3 examples that you presented.
So, but how do you, what if you bump up against the 29 that you have are high risk?
So here's what we would do. We would look at it in 3 kind of tiers. And so we have a statutory intake and supervision authority. So we would first look at ORS 419-453. So kids who are, as I mentioned, serving short-term court-ordered behavioral sanctions, so technical violations. Those youth have already been adjudicated, and they're serving fixed time for probation violations rather than awaiting trial. So their detention is primarily punitive or corrective. That would be the first tier of youth that we would look at to see if they're eligible to be released safely. And they can only be held 1 to 8 days. If we have none of those youth, then we would move on to the second tier. So the second tier would be the department, we would shift focus to pretrial or pre-adjudicated youth held for lower level offenses or technical violations. And under ORS 419C109, we have legal authority to transition youth to highly structured community supervision via a conditional release agreement, which includes use of electronic monitoring while they're out in the community. The youth would be released to the parent or guardian under intensive monitoring protocols. Lastly.
Is that the electronic monitoring that just didn't get funded fully?
Luckily for juvenile detention, for juvenile services.
Or do you all pay for that?
We pay for that out of our budget and our program offer, and we can get you that program offer for community monitoring.
So if you run out of those 2 tiers and you just have that tier that you said you wouldn't release?
I am happy to explain the next tier if you wouldn't mind. When capacity is critical and we have none of those other youth, then we coordinate with the district attorney, the public defenders, and the court to petition the court for immediate unscheduled detention review hearings under ORS 419C153. So under normal circumstances, those judicial reviews occur every 10 days. And so in this capacity crisis, the court would move up the timeline. The defense attorney, the juvenile counselor, the district attorney, the judge, they would review the case specifically to identify why a youth may be stuck, such as waiting on a mental health evaluation or placement availability. And then the judge then may exercise judicial intervention to expedite a community release or find an immediate alternative site placement to open up a local bed. Does that help?
It does. I'll just say when we had the sheriff presenting their emergency release plan, basically they showed because of actions that have been taken by the county in the past, there are very few individuals who are held at the adult system of ones that a judge hasn't previously decided that person should be held prior to their trial. And so I guess and we got very detailed numbers, and it was like, okay, here are the people currently in the adult system, and there were very few that would meet the test of like, hey, here are the number of technical people who are here for technical or like lower risk. I mean, it was pretty scary, the people that they were talking about might be released. And again, if you go to arraignment court, you can see how many people, the vast majority actually of people get released. And I think that's the case for juveniles too, and that's the right thing to do. But the people who are being held, so like, I guess I'm curious about, we don't actually have the numbers here of like how many fall into that technical, if you have a whole host of people who fall into the youth that fall into the technical category versus ones who are there for a very, person-to-person crimes, aggravated murder, assault, robbery, sex abuse, kidnapping, murder in the first degree, rape, robbery. You said you have 6 of those a month? For those types of the Senate Bill 1008 numbers?
I did go to Zimmerman again here with the DA's office, for the record. I did go through and do a breakdown of who's currently in custody and for what. There were, as of yesterday, there were 22 in custody, 20 of which were male, 2 were female. 14 of those were firearm-related youth, which historically, if a youth came in on a firearms charge, they were held. Today, that's not necessarily the case. They get released if there's nothing accompanying it. If there's murders or robberies, then sometimes they get held.
It's just possession?
Just possession, not just possession, that's important too, but yeah, possession. 20 of which have been on some form of release when they were picked up again, so they had been out either on probation or on pretrial release when they were picked up again and then held the second or third or fourth or seventh time. 10 of which were in for attempted murder and murder, 4 for attempts, and 6 youth in for murder And just again, speaking anecdotally, I can remember in 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to 2020, one or two youth being in there on murder. And so, and a lot of those youth were the ones with that 500 number that you were looking at that's so appalling because they're waiting on a waiver. Luckily, I guess, for the detention, Oregon Youth Authority had also touched those youth, and we were able to move some of them pending their murder trials and pending their evaluations to the Oregon Youth Authority, McLaren. And so that was able to free up a lot of those beds that were otherwise being utilized by those. Otherwise, those numbers would be worse. You'd have way more up there with that kind of number. 14 of those are 137707, formerly known as ballot measure 11 towards the youth, are still those crimes: rob 1, rob 2, assault 1, assault 2, arson 1. The other 8 are mostly just looking at them like youth that are on probation for multiple, like one youth in there has 6 stolen cars and he stole another car. He just needs a timeout, needs to sit down for a while we get figured out where his next placement's going to be because he can't quit stealing cars. So those are the more technical, and they're still victim crimes. I mean, you still have the people that are harmed and grandma that can't go pick up her grandkids because she doesn't have a vehicle now, and they're still victims, but not the person to person. I will also note that in comparative cities of Portland's size, we are far less youth in detention. And I know that's a sense of pride, but I don't think it should be at the risk of public safety. Like Milwaukee's similarly sized, and we're a quarter of what they have in custody, a fifth of what Las Vegas, and a third of what Oklahoma City has in their detention facilities for like-sized cities. So this was, it's frustrating when we come in and see a youth that's involved in very serious crimes, and it's not the department's fault. I mean, it's the judges to just the attitude around the seriousness of these crimes, and it kind of becoming the norm when I don't think it should be. I think that you have 3 meals a day, you have school, you have health care, you have mental health care. That's better facility than most of the home or even the contracted facilities. So,
if I may add that Oregon, Multnomah County is also one of the highest in the disproportionality in terms of the relative index of youth of color who are impacted by the system, and we are one of the top in the nation to incarcerate youth of color. And I just want to remind folks that these are kids under 18. Our average age is 15, and I think one of the things to remember is that detention, there is a presumption of innocence as well, and detention is not a long-term timeout or stay for kids. It's harmful, it's institutionalizing, and if the overall goal is to keep kids safe, then I think utilizing and overutilizing detention is not the answer. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm also looking at the data from prior to COVID, that Multnomah County's monthly average was 39. So we're setting a, that's on the calendar year, and then it's calendar year 2018, and then calendar year 2019, it was 35. So it appears that the new capacity is being set below what was just the average capacity less than 10 years ago.
I'm sorry, what numbers are you looking at?
This is like data that you gave me, I'm sorry. It's on the questions I ask about the monthly average detention, because the data that was in the board book was sort of post-COVID, which we know, I mean, nationally, that things were pretty dramatically changed as they needed to be during COVID. So I asked for pre-COVID numbers, and it looks like your average, again, this is information that I received from you.
So these are average length of stay, not average daily population. So those are two different numbers.
So average. So what I asked for was the average number of, the average daily population is what I asked for.
Commissioner, do you mind telling us which number you're specifically looking
Number
at? So we
13.
can 13?
So there's a slide that you had that had average daily populations, but they all start in FY21, which is post-pandemic, which we know is, again, so the question I had was, it appears that, and so your response was to give me an aggregated chart that had the monthly average detention, which appears to be not the length of stay, but the number of individuals.
So Commissioner, in looking at the chart you're referring to, those are monthly average detention admissions by county? So just the admission, not...
So you didn't have the average daily populations from pre-pandemic?
Those are admissions, and we can absolutely get you the average daily populations since 2018.
Which is what I asked for. So I appreciate that. But, because well, I don't know what the number is, but if these were the average daily detentions, it would be setting a number that's lower than what our pre-pandemic averages were as our capacity, which...
I would like to uplift the passage of SB 1008 in 2020, which we started to see a lot of shifts thanks to the Oregon legislature and how juveniles are processed and moved through. And so I think comparing pre-SB 1008 legislation looks a little bit different today.
But we can get those numbers to you, Commissioner.
And I can submit for the record also what's covered under Senate Bill 1008, because they're all very, they're not MIPs or curfew violations. They are very serious charges. This is a question for County Council. Does it matter if we wait a week on the legal immunity, if that's the big driver? Or are you going to be doing emergency releases this week before next Thursday?
Our capacity as of yesterday was 22, so no.
So the question is?
The question was, does it matter if we wait a week to get the information so that we know what we're actually voting on? We have the background information. Does it matter? Because in the statement that was supplied from the department, it said the primary reason we're doing this is to provide the county with legal immunity from civil and criminal liability regarding any resulting releases.
Well, I think that the issue of legal liability is one that I don't have my crystal ball out right now, so I don't know if there in fact will be releases. It seems unlikely. So that's good news. So that means it would be, the likelihood of legal liability would be lower. However, legal liability isn't the only issue here. I think that we also have to look at the youth in custody. So if we get to a point where release is needed, we want to make sure that both our employees and the youth in custody are in an environment which we can support and make sure that all of their rights are being completed. I think that it's up to this board on the timing of passing this plan. Right now, I would, as a cowgirl, I would say we're riding bareback, and that's not usually our best situation to be in. So I would say timing is of the essence, and the department and I would defer to your judgment on timing.
Thank you. I think a question I have, this somewhat relates to the point that Commissioner Singleton brought up. But one of the examples you gave is if the youth had, they would be eligible, but they had nowhere to go because the parent was not agreeing to accept responsibility or to be their guardian, and there was no shelter space. from my perspective, that's a problem we should try and solve versus saying they're just kept in custody. So I would really welcome like us thinking about how we could have an alternative to, for that individual, because it seems like a set of circumstances that it's not really then based on risk, it's really based on like you don't have a support network, even though you're lower risk. And it seems like we should try and find other solutions because like there is lots of data on if the longer individuals are held, the greater the impact. They miss more school, they get out of circulation, like they maybe lose their job, a whole host of things. So it seems like it's cases like that we should try and find alternatives. And I'm not saying you haven't, but it's just like we should really get after that because that seems like really unfair to that individual for no fault of their own if they're lower risk not to be able to be released. I'm going to go back to the question I asked about, was there formal consultation with victims and survivors? The answer I got from you all is there, on this particular plan, that there hadn't been, and I would hope that's just standard versus informal consultation. So, we've already had in the county, because of Judge Roberts' decision, that a whole host of victims were told their cases were just dismissed, and I'm concerned that we aren't including, that they're not included in what our plan, any sort of plan that might create some pretty significant trauma for a victim.
My office is committed to reaching, as long as we know what release is being sought, we're committed to reaching out to those victims. And I know they also have a victims advocate in the juvenile services that's really good and in tune with victims' need. We just have to know about it, and then we're committed to taking care of that notification.
I guess just fundamentally, thank you, I appreciate that. And I would expect that if we're putting forward a plan that, because it becomes automatic, right? Like if the commission approves it, like it doesn't come back here to the commission. You execute off this plan, right?
I think the caveat is that the board, the last line of the resolution is that the board may adopt an additional, any additional planning that goes along with this. And I think just to uplift that the youth who are being released, if they don't meet the criteria, the two that I mentioned, that there is coordination with the district attorney's office, the victim advocates, the court, et cetera. So there's coordination.
Okay. I actually have an amendment that's, I'm going to introduce at a certain point, that tries to memorialize that, because I am concerned that we're being asked to approve something that there wasn't a formal consultation. And again, unless somebody knew it was going to be on today's agenda, couldn't have provided feedback on. I also ask, at least I do, daily get in my inbox the nightly census from the adult correctional system, from the sheriff's office, of like, here's where we are in terms of capacity. And it's actually very helpful because, when you see the yellow warning, you know that like, hey, a release could be implemented, or there could be a freeze on bookings, or like stopping of bookings. Is that something that you don't currently do that? So the awareness that we've bumped up against it, it wouldn't have been something that the commission would have known about?
I believe in consultation with the county, with county council, they're under 18. So just, do you mean a list of who's there, or just the number?
No, it's just a number. I mean, they have it, it's just a grid that they just plug in the numbers of like, here's where we are at each of the facilities. So downtown, Inverness, and then it has male, female. And so you can see by population where they are. I think yesterday they were in their low to mid 80s. But when they get to 90, then we get a yellow warning, which means probably booking's going to be restricted, or an emergency release could happen.
We can share what is sent out if that's helpful for you to see if you can duplicate that.
The list that we get daily does include identifiers with names, but then we do have it broken down by just total, both broken down by genders, and so that is something that we can work to be providing the board.
Yeah, I mean, just as from a policymaker standpoint, to me, for example, in the adult system, like staffing levels, it's not just important for the staff who work there to have appropriate staffing levels, it's very important for the adults in custody that there's appropriate staffing. So it gives a good snapshot of like, hey, here's where we are vis-a-vis, because it's not the facility capacity and in the adult system, and it looks like it's not the facility capacity in the youth system either. It's like really from a staffing capacity. So it's helpful to know, and I know the commission has taken action before when those numbers were lower. So I think that would be an important thing to have. And this is data that I would want is, again, if you look at how the sheriff's office presented, here's how we, especially if something is potentially, there is going to be an emergency release, like here's where people fit in the quadrants, so we can be realistic, because if we're saying like, no higher risk individual is going to be, the youth is going to be released, but that's all we have, we should know that. And I appreciate Deputy DA Zimmerman, the information you provided. It's just like, it's not like the current population, which is, what we would be dealing with. There was a long discussion about the costs, and it sounds like in the past you use vacancies, savings, and a variety of other budgetary tools to address when you had overtime, and you don't have those anymore, it sounds like. Did you ask for money in this year's budget for?
We did not.
To address that? So the mechanism was instead the emergency, like when we get, instead of asking for overtime, it's like we're going to use, the mechanism is going to be the emergency release.
Do you mind if I go? Okay. I think with the juvenile system, so we have unprecedented external system dynamics that impact the framework of which we can predict our population, if you will. So, for example, standard predictive indicators estimated that an average length of stay for Multnomah County youth would have remained stable between 23 and 26 days. And the core fiscal crisis that we're in is driven by duration, not the volume. So, for example, our facility admitted 216 youth in both 2023 and 2025. But what's different is that in 2025, the shortage of public defenders, systemic court delays, lack of placement options, our average length of stay skyrocketed to 36.3 days. So extended long-term stays also inherently require higher intensity and round-the-clock staffing. And an example that I shared earlier about the one-on-one with the youth that we have that has been there for over 60 days, the staffing model and the overtime related to that specific youth is something that is hard to calculate and predict for, if that makes sense. So we've fluctuated, and I think one of the other contributors was the backlog that was conveyed to DCJ in December of 2025, January 2026, that in planning for the budget and not knowing what the backlog was going to be, what petitions were going to be filed, what was going to be dismissed, et cetera, that is hard to predict in terms of costs. So I think what you're asking about the overtime and if we asked for it, we did not specifically ask for it. And I honestly, if you had asked me 7 months ago, would I be sitting here asking the board for this? I couldn't have predicted that either, because we just didn't know. So.
Yeah. I guess, do you think going forward that the circumstances that existed are going to continue to exist because we now have data? And if they are going to continue to, doing forecasting it's always complicated, but it's super important because there's two ways we can approach it. One is through the budget or through this particular tool. And my preference would be for us to be intentional about it versus, so having a better sense of what the forecasted needs. So I think if, for example, I had known that high-risk individuals might be higher risk, and I think that's a good discussion to have, what's higher risk. Youth were going to be released because the commission didn't provide the budget or wasn't asked for, that maybe different decisions would have been made. And just like going forward, that would be helpful. And again, maybe this daily census is a good way to track, like, hey, how close are we getting? What are other tools we can use to find more appropriate settings for people who shouldn't be there?
Yes, Commissioner, like Kyla had elevated, we were already in the budget process when we hit capacity, and in FY27, DCJ lost over $4 million in county general fund, and so this was not something by the time we hit capacity. But to your point, you are correct that we are going to be monitoring this and the trend of having youth stay in our facility for longer than previously. We no longer have that quicker turnaround time, if you will, in detention, because we have youth that are staying and occupying a bed for, in some cases, years. And so we will definitely be keeping a track of not just the census, but our overtime budget. And if as we are preparing for FY28, it will be a budget ask if the trend is continuing, or we will be having different discussions.
I appreciate that. And I also, it would be great to know like where we can put pressure on other points in the system. Ensuring faster defense counsel being appointed, all the things that whatever the district attorney's office needs to actually have not people sitting, youth sitting for a long time. I mean, those are edit strategies other than emergency releases that like I'm willing to go to bat for the DAs and the public defenders to make sure that we don't have youth sitting around for a long time because that is not a good thing to have happen. Okay. Thank you for answering my questions, and I look forward to getting the other information. I do have a proposed amendment to the plan.
So we have are you making a motion?
I am.
Okay. Do you want to
It's to the plan, and I mean, again, since this is
do you want to describe the amendment?
Sure, I'll pass it out. That it sets some criteria, as you'll see in the plan, and it's in number 4. And this is in consultation with the district attorney's office. It also adds a number 5 and then reorders it. It sets a requirement that the district attorney's office has 24 hours prior to a forced release of a youth and shall, in coordination with the district attorney's office, ensure that victims are notified of a youth's forced release. Again, most of the Senate Bill 1008 crimes, did you have a copy of this, or do you want me to?
I do, but I may not be an updated copy.
Okay, shall I? Again, since many of the
Okay, so before we get into
okay,
discussion.
sorry, you asked me
I just
why
asked
it
you
was,
to
but go ahead.
Are you going to continue to read through it?
Well, you asked me what it did, so I was trying to
Yeah, I just need you to enter it in, and then we need to get a second so we can have discussion about it.
I'll second.
Oh,
Is that where we're at?
I'm going to move an amendment to the plan.
okay. So,
And this would be another reason, actually, why I'm going to make a motion that we delay the vote to next week, because.
so we have a motion and a second, so we have an amendment on the table, and Commissioner, now you can read through
Speak to it, thank you. One of the reasons why I was wanting to separate out the two is, of course, I would want DCJ's feedback on this particular amendment. I feel very strongly that, given the nature of the charges, often that there usually is a person on the other end of it, in some cases, other youth, and that I don't see a prioritization of, there's in the plan references to notification, but not really safety plans. I know from the school district, whenever we have, youth-to-youth issues, that we always create a safety plan, and I don't really see that in the current plan. It's more like we're going to notify, and so I would want to make sure that victims are notified before a release happens.
okay, thank you. So we have an amendment on the table. Any questions or discussions on this item?
Commissioner, did you mean to strike the last, I know you're replacing number 4, but the way this reads that it would take away, the board may issue additional orders or resolutions, that should probably be number 6?
Well, I mean, frankly, the board can always, I don't think we need to have it in the plan that we may take action. To me, it doesn't seem necessary.
So you did mean to strike it?
Yeah, because I don't know that it's necessary. I think it's obvious that the board can always issue additional orders or resolutions to carry out the functions and authorities.
So that's number 4 in the resolution itself, not in the plan, and this motion is on the plan.
Right.
So are you,
No.
this is an amendment amending the plan, not the resolution?
Correct.
And so on the copy that I have, and there's several going around, but the language, the board may issue additional orders or resolutions to carry out the functions, et cetera. That's in the resolution itself.
This also says the resolution takes effect on 2020.
I have a lot of questions about it as well, but I'm just pointing out the issue that you raised.
Thank you.
So it seems like what this amendment is doing is putting some of the plan in the resolution instead of, the plan is a part of the resolution, I will say, because it is page 3 and 4 of the, but this is taking part of the plan and moving it up into the resolution. Was that the intention?
Yes.
Okay.
So it is an amendment to the resolution, not to the plan?
Yes, correct. Although it takes language from the,
No, that's fine. It's just confusing, Commissioner, because the proposed amendment language at the top of this says it's to the plan, but then the language is about the resolution. So I'm just trying to figure out what this is actually amending.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment?
Procedurally, I'm not sure how this works.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I fully understand the implications. So I don't know how I want to vote yet. Both, like, on the amendment. Can we postpone? Can we, I don't know how I feel about this. This is the first time I'm seeing it. I haven't I can't crosswalk it, so I don't know what I'm voting on.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I also am concerned about the mechanism which this is making the amendment in putting some but not all of the plan in the resolution, and what that means from a legal standpoint to have like differences between the plan and then what's in the resolution. I don't understand the potential legal implications of having a plan that says one thing and a resolution that says another thing. And I would love to hear from the department about potential impacts of this. I will say I also have some questions about, because the plan itself, if you look on page 4 of the plan, it does say the Juvenile Service Division shall comply with all notice requirements under ORS 419A.005, ensuring the presiding court, district attorney, and defense counsel are notified of the emergency and any youth forced releases pursuant to the plan. The JSD director, and then it goes on to say, number 8, the JSD director or their designee in coordination with the district attorney's office shall ensure that victims are notified of a youth's forced release in accordance with Oregon Constitution, Article 1, Section 42, and applicable statutes. So Commissioner, I'm trying to understand, what is your intention then with this amendment that isn't already part of the plan?
I don't feel it's duplicative, and I want to be clear that, again, in the answers to the questions that were provided me, they said there was no formal consultation with victims or survivors, and that's something that I want to have embedded in the work. And there's also a timeline. There's a requirement, the input in the safety of the victims through consultation with the district attorney's office unit, adding that into what's considered. And again, ideally, if we were a larger body, we would have committees, and this would have come through the committee, and I would have had a chance to, again, I think we should do our work in public, because certainly if there's emergency releases, the county commission is going to be the one who made those decisions.
Okay, so Commissioner Moyer, I want to respect your kind of quandary about where you are and the need to kind of have further questions. So if you,
I was like, I'll make a motion to postpone. I would love to have some time certain to it. So we're still talking about amendment. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a desire to postpone, I think, the entire issue, to have further time to really delve into the impacts of this and what's being asked for. We have an amendment on the table, but then we also have a desire to postpone. Do we need to take care of the amendment before we postpone, or can we have the motion to postpone the entire item while the amendment's on the table?
I'm happy to table my own amendment if that allows us to go to the larger discussion.
Well, I would say, Commissioner, that if you withdrew your amendment at this time so that we could have further discussion about what the proposed amendment is, and I can help craft and get that amendment in the form that you're looking at, it might make our procedure in the future more workable.
All right, so you
I'll withdraw my amendment.
okay, great. And it sounds like Commissioner Moyer, then we have a motion to postpone?
Yes, please.
Okay, do I have a second?
Is it a motion to postpone till next week, or is it a motion to postpone indefinitely?
A motion to postpone till next week. Does that work? Calendar-wise?
That's a great question.
We're supposed to have time certain slots. We shouldn't have to keep asking this.
Yes.
Yes. Next week.
Great. So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Okay. All those in favor of postponing R3 until next week, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so carried. All right, we will move on. Thank you, all of you, for all your time on this today. Tasia, can we move on to R4?
R4, Moderate Income Revolving Loan Program, authorizing to sign an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Housing and Community Service Department.
May I have a motion?
Second.
Sorry.
All right, so Commissioner Singleton moves, Commissioner Jones-Dixon seconds, approval of R4. Multnomah County and the City of Portland have a serious affordable housing deficit. We have heard about that for months, years, and have for decades. Current housing projects in the pipeline and development projections continue to lag well behind what we collectively know we need. Responsible jurisdictions should be developing 3,000 apartment scale units per year, and ours are not developing at a pace to match that need. The discussion in front of this board today is to support the city's implementation of a housing funding program to expand financing for development and unlock access to competitive state funding for moderate income household units. We have Stacy Bork, my Deputy Chief of Staff, and Eric Ariano, Chief Financial Officer for Multnomah County, to present this issue to us. Good morning. Good afternoon.
I think we've crossed over to the afternoon. Maybe not. I'm Stacy Bork, Chair, Commissioners. Thank you so much for having us.
And Eric Ariano, Chief Financial Officer.
So we are going to introduce the MERL program and the city and state's request for the county to be a partner in the city's application and implementation of the moderate income revolving loan program. We have some colleagues from the city who are the experts on MERL that are here with us today. Eric and I are going to walk through a very brief presentation. We've received a couple of questions that we know we'll want to walk through as well, and then likely we'll invite our colleagues from the City of Portland and Prosper Portland. I almost called it PDC this morning when I was preparing, which made me feel incredibly old, and who we'll invite up to answer questions as we go through today. Thank you. Next slide, please, Tasia. So we are here today to seek the board's support in authorizing Multnomah County and the chair to enter into an IGA with Oregon Housing and Community Services, which is a state department, to support the city's implementation of the MERL program. The county entering into an agreement with OHCS is a state requirement for the city to have a master agreement with OHCS and get access to these state level funds. So SB 1537 allocated $75 million into a state general fund into a state MERL program. And this is now translated to cities and counties being able to access and unlock these state funds to develop moderate income housing in their jurisdictions across the state. So the funds are competitive, they're statewide, and applications are moving now. We know of a number of other jurisdictions across the state that have already begun applying for these funds, so there is interest and somewhat of an urgency for the city to have access to these dollars. Do you want to talk about the loan repayment?
The loan repayment?
Mm-hmm. Or jump into the financing pieces.
Maybe I'll jump into the financing pieces.
Sure.
Do you want to cover that, and then I'll go to finance?
Sure. Let's go to the next slide, Tasia. So a few notes on MERL. I know we've had a chance to brief many of you and talk to staff and submit a number of different kind of FAQs. But the program targets tenants living at or below 120% of area median income. And the loans are the equivalent of a 10-year property tax assessment. I know we're going to have questions on that today. We can jump into those. Go ahead, Tasia. So the state statute requires that the projects are in a TIF district. Outside of a TIF, they have to be payment in lieu of or pilot as a repayment source. And in either instance, the developer and the project are the actual source of the repayment. Last Thursday, the City of Portland passed their ordinance moving this project forward and the application forward. So per City of Portland ordinance, they've reduced the AMI and also required that these projects are within a half mile of transit. Next slide, please, Tasia.
I can jump in here.
Okay.
So, kind of going back to what Stacy was referencing is that the first piece in terms of the financing component, their finance component, is that there's two methods to essentially repay the loan, and that's through a property tax in lieu, and also city pledges to an alternate repayment method through an existing TIF district. And so for the locations that are currently, I think, subject to the potential here is that they're both located in existing TIF districts. So trying to evaluate the potential impact to Multnomah County. They're already in established TIF districts, so we already know in terms of that foregone revenue, that's already there. So this is not additional revenue that would be impacted by Multnomah County. And then specifically to this slide, one of the things that we did want to evaluate is if we move forward with, we're lucky to get this through the city of Portland, as that what would the cost be to the county? So working through our tax assessor, Mike Vaughn, that's back there, him and his team evaluated from an administrative perspective what the county costs would be. And this involves program startup, appraisals, annual reporting, and final disqualification of exemptions. And the range of the cost to the county is between $5,000 to $7,000 over a 10-year exemption. So we want to recover that piece as part of any agreement that we'd have moving forward to make sure that we're held whole in terms of what we're doing in terms of administration for this. The other thing that we want to just provide, just as a hypothetical potential revenue impacts of a MRL, if there was a project with the value of $10 million with a taxable value of $5 million, it's roughly around $31,000 annually over the life of the exemption. And so that'd be about $310,000 of foregone tax revenues over a 10-year period. That's assuming that's outside of the TIF district.
Thank you. Next slide. As I mentioned, the City of Portland passed their ordinance last week. We're at step 2, which is bringing this to Multnomah County Commission to consider authorizing, again, the chair to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with OHCS, which is a required step at the state level for the city to move on to their next step, which is a master agreement with OHCS, begin the rulemaking, and then assuming all things move forward as currently projected, the city would launch the application process in this fall, so just a couple of months. Thank you, Madam Chair. That is the end of our presentation.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate the presentation. We'll go to the board to see, was there any public testimony on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. We'll go to the board to see who has questions about this. We'll start with Commissioner Moyer.
Yes, Eric, you mentioned that we would want to negotiate related to the estimated cost to the county assessor. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's just a reference that in terms of if we move forward with this, is making sure that if we're incurring costs related to this MRL program, is that we cover our administrative costs, and that'd be through the partnership that we have with the City of Portland on this.
Do we have any other ability to negotiate within this agreement, or is that the only terms of which this program allows us to negotiate?
I think that's the only component in terms of kind of, I think when I'm looking at that particular piece is in terms of the impact to the county in terms of the administration, but not necessarily the MRL program as is. The MRL program's through the state of Oregon. It has certain parameters around how you manage that program. So that makes sense.
Here's my reason, and that's fine. I was just curious. Please do correct me, anyone, if I have this incorrect. It might be dated or I'm thinking incorrectly, but my understanding of Multnomah County's median income is $88,000 a year. Is that correct? That we're at $88,000 a year for median income? Or ballpark-ish? Is it household? Is it individual? I don't.
It depends on the size of the household. So
median income varies by size of household? Why would median income vary by size of household? In this program it does, or in? Okay. Questions about,
I want to answer your question.
questions about the program. These rental units, and I'm correct, they are rental units from for-profit entities, correct? I mean, otherwise you wouldn't need a property tax exemption because you wouldn't pay property tax if it was a nonprofit. So we've got,
We're going to have folks from the city come down to have answer some of these specific questions. Thank you for being here today.
okay. So, question. When we talk about incomes between 50 and 120% of median income, what is that range? And does it vary by household size?
Good afternoon. Commissioners, my name is Andrea Jacob, for the record. I'm with the Deputy City Administrator's Office for Community and Economic Development. I've pulled up the table of Portland AMI, and it does range by household size. And then, so I can forward you this table, showing 30 to 140% of AMI, and household size ranging from 1 to 10. So it does, I can, if you want to know a particular household size and a percentage, I could read you the number.
Sure, 1.
1 at which AMI? 30%, 50, 60, 50? 44,000.
100% AMI. What is?
89,810.
I nailed that.
You were very close.
You get the prize today.
Okay, so if I understand this program correctly, a developer, somebody who wants to create rental units, can apply. They can get a loan that is basically against the property tax that they would pay. That's their repayment to the loan and not the property tax. Is that correct?
Outside of a TIF district, correct, and it is not a loan. We are structuring it. It's a loan from the state, but we are offering the funds to the developer in the form of a grant.
Got it, okay. Okay, so I am developing housing. I'm going to be honest, I have personally thought about doing this in a previous moment in my career, and my father was a developer. So I'm looking at this option, and this is a great deal for a developer. Like, I would seriously want to do this because I could rent, because it's up to 120, I could rent to people who make $100,000 a year. Individual person makes $100,000 a year. What is the affordable rent for a single person who makes $100,000 a year? I mean, it says you have to charge affordable rent. What is that? How is that not going to be market rate?
I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Sarah.
Sorry. Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Harple. I am interim manager at Prosper Portland. The established rent is tied to the table that Andrea was mentioning. So as you establish the income level, that translates then to a maximum rent that you can charge that individual, netting out their utility costs.
Okay, but I'm going to be honest, I doubt it's a wild subsidy for somebody who makes $100,000 a year as a single person with no dependent. So I'm probably profitable. I mean, honestly, if I were, so my question about can the county have a conversation about who would actually get this? I am wildly more supportive of supporting a family of 6 with the median household income or less than I am for a single person with a 120% household income. Like, as a developer, I guarantee I'm gonna wanna build 1-bedrooms. Like, there are reasons I wanna buy, I mean, this is what we do. Like, who's gonna do the least damage to my property? Who can I use the smallest square footage so I reduce my costs? And I'm gonna be able to charge the most rent. I'm not really wildly interested in subsidizing that. I think that's totally fair business. If somebody wants to do that, go make 1-bedrooms. Go make money off of people who are making $100,000 a year, which I don't think is wildly high, I think, but it is for a single person, comfortable, hopefully still in Portland. So my question is like, if you're asking us to forego tax revenue, I got to see a community benefit. I think there are scenarios that possibly meet that, particularly larger families who really struggle to find housing. And then there are communities I don't think it's worth incentivizing developers to create. So I guess my question is there restrictions? Can we agree to something? Can we target this? Because I think this gives a competitive advantage to one developer over another at the expense of the taxpayer that I'm not personally willing to give, unless you can show me that it actually is benefiting people who struggle to find affordable housing for their family, which I don't think an individual making $100,000 a year is the person struggling the most to find affordable housing. So I guess that's my question of like, is there a way to target this benefit toward who we would like to see have greater access to affordable housing versus, frankly, a scenario in which it feels like a developer giveaway? That was a question.
I think I'll say a few things. One, I just want to clarify that this isn't intended to be an affordable housing program. We have a lot of programs at the City of Portland and funds to deal with that sector of the market. What we are seeing is a gap in moderate income housing, and this is money from the state that we are simply trying to scoop up. It's made available. It's somewhat opportunistic. The state is the one that is going to make the decision about the projects. We will take in the applications. We will evaluate them for basic underwriting and other criteria, compliance with the state statute, but then it is OHCS decision to approve or not approve the project. Given the limited pool of funding and the statewide nature of the program, we are really only expecting a very small handful of projects to come into Portland, some of which at least one of which is likely to be in a TIF district, so would not actually be in the same category as the tax exemption option. So I guess from our view, it's a limited foregone revenue for an upside benefit of producing this type of housing, which we are not seeing in the market really at all, because all of the incentives and subsidies are targeted at the tranche of the market that you're mentioning. But I'm going to pass it over to Sarah to make sure I didn't miss anything.
I would also offer, as it goes through the underwriting process, we are verifying that there is in fact a gap in the financing stack, that this project cannot move forward but for this financing. And Prosper, as the coordinator of the underwriting process, has other loan products that we can make available. So if we see that a development project comes in for underwriting and it has sufficient cash flow to offer debt service within our other loan products, that would be the first step that we would take with that developer. If their cash flow cannot support additional loans, whether it's through Prosper or other sources, and they truly do have a gap that they and we have verified, then we pass it to the state for their own evaluation of that gap.
I'm confused because my understanding is we actually have a significant number of vacant units at the 60% or higher median income, that we cannot find renters because they cannot afford it, but that we in fact have vacancy in that threshold. So I don't understand we either do have vacancy or we don't. Like, I'm very confused.
We will want to come back to you with specifics around vacancies. That I'm not completely up to speed on the connection between that and this program.
Well, we're talking about, you're saying our market lacks housing for people who are 50 to 120% median income, except we have been told by not your department, but other departments and Home Forward that in fact they have many, many vacant units that they cannot fill because, frankly, they're so close to market rate and it's not been maintained well, and those who most need subsidized housing can't afford it. So like, I get that there's a possibility this doesn't actually impact Multnomah County, but there is also a possibility it does. I hear there's a need, but then I've been told by the same government, we actually have an excess. I'm not housing community development. I really question this program, period. I know we're not talking huge dollars, but I philosophically am sick of for-profit entities finding loopholes to not pay taxes while making money. I am so over this conversation, frankly. I guess I just, like, this is just not a very good program. Okay, I get it. I love money into our community, but I don't really see the community benefit in this unless it is specifically for a demonstrated population with need, which, sorry, it hasn't been demonstrated today.
I appreciate that, Commissioner. The one thing I'll add is that I think oftentimes in this space when we are, and even for Home Forward or any of our nonprofit or housing developers, when we're talking about housing development, and I know at least one other commissioner is going to jump into this here shortly, so I'm not going to dive too deeply into it. Just one. But we're often talking about 0 to 30, and we're talking about people that have $0 for income. And we don't spend a lot of time talking about the housing needs of people. And I'm not, how much somebody can and can't afford based on their income when we're getting into the higher AMIs. But I do think this is an area where we don't spend a lot of time as a board or as a county, because it's not necessarily who we're serving, but understanding that we do have a dearth of housing units for this income level, and the vacancies I think that we're seeing so predominantly in our affordable housing and subsidized is a whole host of other issues that is not necessarily related to this specific program. So I just want to name that. I agree. I hear you very clearly what you're saying. And I think we have two big problems to solve here, and this program doesn't solve the bigger one that you're raising, which is people in those affordable housing vacancies.
Right, but I also was presented no evidence that there is another problem.
Okay, and I heard, Andrea, that we'll get that back to you. So, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Singleton. And I just want to note, I have a hard stop at 12:45, so I'm going to have to leave if we're still going on, and I will pass the gavel to Commissioner Johnstick.
I have a hard stop at 12:55. So
55? Okay.
Yeah, so I'll pass it to Commissioner Broome-Edwards.
Okay, so we will, and we will see how quickly we get through things. Thank you.
So I'm going to add a little bit more on there, and I think part of what I'm a little frustrated by is that the city ordinance had the ability to target a lower income, if I'm understanding that OHCS said it could be up to 120%. And then there was an intentional decision to target an AMI level that continues to be above the folks that we know that we serve in ending homelessness work, even though we had the opportunity to include a lower income level there. I also think that this is not about the two of you. This is about my ongoing frustration about how we talk about affordable housing. I'm going to read you a couple of numbers. Total units in the pipeline or in construction from Portland Housing Bureau is 3,336 in affordable housing. 0 to 30% AMI is 784. 31 to 60 is 2,205. 61 to 80 is 346. So with our affordable housing dollars, we are also targeting a similar income level to what is coming up here. We can't, at some point in this community, we have got to stop talking about affordable housing as if it is solving for our lowest income folks who are struggling at maybe max 40% AMI, and then acting like workforce and middle housing is a different kind of housing. That is what we are building in affordable housing. We are not addressing the lowest income level. I understand that that's not the intent of this, but it feels critical to call this out because that's where I think my colleague is getting stuck in. We do have vacancies at 60% AMI throughout our affordable housing portfolio. And trickle-down housing is just as real as trickle-down economics. It does not work. I am not going to stop this because this particular, and I will take this up with OHCS as well, I think they could have done a much better job of how they structured this and targeted it. Had it been for homeownership, we would be having a very different conversation today. So I don't have any questions. I did ask some questions. I didn't get great answers. That's fine. We just have to figure out how to actually address the housing need in this community, and I continue to be challenged at every table I sit at, whether it's the SHS table, the SOC, with the city, with Home Forward, everybody at the table. We're not having real conversations about what the greatest need is in this community, and we continue to throw dollars at an income level that at least at this point in time is similar to market. Again, not a Housing Bureau or Prosper issue on where this was targeted, but I think the City Council had some options, and I'm disappointed that we didn't further target, at least at the 40% AMI level where we know most of our families experiencing homelessness currently sit and are stuck in our shelter system.
One of the dynamics of this program is that a property cannot receive more than one tax exemption at a time. And so we do have a tax exemption program in place for those more affordable units. And so they would need to elect to forego that tax exemption in order to take advantage of this tax exemption. And so in consultation with the Portland Housing Bureau, this tool is not additive to the toolkit for those lower income housing units. However, it is additive to the middle income housing tranche where we do not have the same level of tools in our toolkit right now. And so that is the challenge of why they drew the line where it did, because it wasn't seen as being beneficial to that income or that capital stack.
I disagree that we don't have the tools because that's what we're building. And I think that's what I'm saying. We are building at the income levels that are in this, maybe not as many at 120%, but a lot up to 80%. Between 31 and 80% is the overwhelming majority of the pipeline of affordable housing. And so there are other tools for this income level. Again, I think the ordinance could have looked different and could have had some other options in there, and this is where we are. I don't want to belabor it, but I do think that there's a disconnect between affordable housing and what we're talking about here, and we have got to figure that out.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Brehm-Edwards.
Thanks for the presentation. Of the $75 million from the state, what do we potentially anticipate might be sort of a Multnomah County? I'm just trying to get the size of the prize here. The Multnomah County or the city of Portland?
That number has since been reduced down to $55 million, and currently $10 million is set aside for projects within rural locations until early 2027. So that effectively takes the pot of money down to about $45 million available right now. We've estimated Portland could receive somewhere in the 10% range, 15% range of that pot of funds, based proportionally across the state.
So we're talking like
$5 million.
$4 to $5 million. And then I was trying to just then, again, sort of going through the finances and looking at the return. So talking about the financial impact of the county, it says, there's an example that's provided for like a project that has, for one project, the $31,000 annually and $310,000 of foregone tax revenue over a 10-year period. That's one project. How many projects would we be, again, sort of the size of the exemption, how many projects would we be anticipating potentially with that, say if we're going to use $5 million?
We've estimated somewhere between 1 and 5 projects, depending on the project size. It could be a single large project. We know that there's interest in several smaller unit projects as well.
So annually, it would be anywhere from 31,000 to 150,000 of foregone tax revenue. And that would, one project would be approximately how many units? Sorry.
It can vary from anywhere from 10 units to 250 units, depending on the project size.
For this particular example that you used, is that based on a particular unit size?
That's our example. Yeah.
Is this a story problem?
Oh, what was the question? What unit size?
The question is, in the example, the financial impact, it talks about 31,000 for a project. What, did we use like a size of the project for that?
10 mil, sorry, my apologies, Commissioner. The project size was $10 million.
Like how, what would you translate that into number of units?
Number of units. I don't know the number.
Mike's going to come up since he created the hypothetical scenario.
Okay. The person who wrote the story problem.
Yes.
Mike Vaughn, Multnomah County Assessor. So not given a lot of specifics at the time I was doing the example. Basically, I was looking at it as one project. So the 5,000 to 7,000 in costs for the expenditure, the cost that would be per project. But the other was based on a total value. And that would be the assessed or taxable value of $5 million. So I used $10 million as an example. That could be 10 projects. There was no size of units, or it was just overall taxable value that would be used in the tax calculation as foregone.
Maybe I'm not asking the question clearly. What I'm just trying to figure out is for the approximate 100, say 31 to $150,000 that we'd be giving up annually in property tax, like how many units would we be getting in this example, approximately? Or like what was the model used?
I think just going to be really candid with you, Commissioner. I think I understand the question, which is essentially for $150,000 of foregone revenue, how many units of housing does the county predict is going, in the city predict is going to be developed?
Correct. And I know it's just a total estimate because there's a lot of variables, but like what is that?
So I don't know the answer to that question. And I think it's a per door cost, and the units range so significantly in the size. So I don't know if our colleagues from Prosper have like an average, per door cost that we can provide to the commissioner, but I think I'm understanding your question very clearly. I think it's a reasonable one.
I mean, I'm just going to say I'm going to be supportive of this, but it would be good to know that as a what's the trade-off for the lost revenue. It's not a huge amount, but it's also, just having gone through the budget exercise, every dollar is important. So just like, what do we be getting for that foregone revenue?
We see a range of gaps in projects, obviously depending on construction type, location, et cetera, and those can range from $20,000 per unit to hundreds of thousands of dollars per unit. I think the example, though, reflects what is the tax value of that project, and so at a $10 million tax value, that is a relatively small development. I don't know, how that would translate to a number of units within that tax value of a single development, but it would be.
You said between 20,000 to how much?
Hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the construction type and location.
Okay.
I think the only thing I would add is that our intent was hopefully, because this is it's a small program and there's some administrative cost to setting this all up, our hope was to get as many units as possible out of the investment and out of the application process. So we don't, as I said, don't have a full control over that, but that was the intent, to try and spur as much development out of this small program as we could.
Okay. And the other question is there some sort of cap on how much we potentially could be out on property taxes?
There wouldn't be. Generally, when we provide estimates, that would be more toward the upper end of the threshold of what you would expect not to get. But certainly when you're doing actual, that usually comes down further based on limitations and that sort of thing.
Okay. I mean, there's a natural limitation just because of the size of the loans and everything.
Size of the loan, size of the entire pool at the state, but also that every other city, and we're not many other jurisdictions have already started accessing, so I think it just reduces the total liability number for the
I have to
county.
ask, but thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones-Dixon.
No questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any public testimony on this item? I think I forgot to ask that.
Yes.
Okay. We do have public testimony?
No, I'm sorry, we're still on R4. Thought
We
moved
still
on to
are on
R5.
R4, yes.
There's no
Okay.
public testimony.
All right. May we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Brim Edwards?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
Yes.
Commissioner Moyer?
No.
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Chair Vega-Peterson?
Yes, R4 is approved. Okay, and I am going to pass the gavel now to my vice chair.
R5, resolution for an intergovernmental agreement with the cities of Fairview, Wood Village, and the city of Troutdale for continued cable-related services.
May I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Commissioner Brim Edwards, seconded by Commissioner Singleton. R5, welcome. Hayden.
Good morning, Vice Chair and Commissioners. Can you pull up the presentation? Oh, for the record, my name is W. Hayden Ferris. I'm the Policy Director for Commissioner Moyer, and I use he, him pronouns. So once it's up, I will be presenting on both R5 and R6. I'll delineate in the presentation where that divide is, but these are two back-to-back items designed to be really discussed about jointly. So 2 weeks ago, I presented an overview of the MHCRC, its dissolution, and the recommended 4-step plan for Multnomah County to manage MHCRC dissolution. You approved the first IGA, leaving only 3 steps left. Congratulations. Today, I'm presenting on steps 2 and 3 of the plan, an IGA with Troutdale to collect and disperse cable revenues, and an update to the Comcast franchise agreement. Next slide, please. Cool. There it is. All right. To recap why we're here, the MHCRC was formed through an agreement between Multnomah County and the cities of Fairview, Gresham, Portland, Troutdale, and Wood Village. An IGA among the governments grants the MHCRC the authority to regulate and administer cable franchise agreements, and Multnomah County renewed this franchise agreement with Comcast in May of 2025 for 10 years. On September 16, 2025, Gresham approved a resolution to withdraw from the MHCRC, accelerating discussions of MHCRC dissolution. And on January 29, 2026, you approved dissolution of the MHCRC by or on June 30th, and Multnomah County became the final jurisdiction to sign onto MHCRC dissolution. Next slide, please. So, like I said, 2 weeks ago, you approved the first step of the 4-part plan, an IGA for Portland to oversee MHCRC grants that extend beyond the MHCRC's dissolution of June 30th. Today's presentation focuses on parts 2 and 3 of this plan. Part 2 is an IGA where Troutdale will collect and distribute cable revenues, including revenues to Metro East, and provide oversight and compliance of these funds. And Part 3 is updating the Comcast franchise agreement to reflect a post-MHCRC world. Part 4 will be adjusting Multnomah County's FTE to account for minimal service additions to county staff, and this will be brought forward by DCS at a later date. Next slide, please. So on to the IGA for your consideration, the Cable Franchise Revenue Collection and Administration Intergovernmental Agreement. This is an IGA with Multnomah County, Fairview, Wood Village, and Troutdale for Troutdale to collect and distribute cable revenues and provide oversight and compliance for these revenues. This IGA will continue the same funding allocation to Metro East that the county participated in via the MHCRC. This funding allocation is 60% of franchise fees, which act as general fund revenue, will continue to go to Metro East, and this will help pay for operating expenses, and 40% of the remaining franchise fees will come to Multnomah County. Then 100% of PEG fees, which stands for Public Education and Government Fees, and function as capital funds, will go to Metro East. and these help pay for both capital expenses and capital expenses specifically related to Metro East being the county's sole PEG provider. For reference, in FY25, Multco received a total of $140,000 in franchise fees and $70,000 in PEG fees. So if we continue the 60%, 40% divide, Metro East will receive $84,000 in franchise fees or operating revenue and $70,000 in capital funds. Then Multnomah County will receive $56,000 in general funds. I want to point out that in the memo, I listed $40,000 in general funds we'd receive. The correct number is $56,000. And then the cost of this IGA is $1,000 per year for 10 years. Next slide, please. So what is Metro East and why are we giving them money? First, Metro East provides coverage and production of board meetings, including this one and our 16-hour budget session, or sorry, 12-hour budget session, 16-hour day. They're in that room I've highlighted in this image. So Metro East, hi, thanks for being here. And they provide many services to us in addition to being the coverage provider of board meetings. They're also our sole PEG provider or PEG access provider. As our PEG access provider, they provide a long list of things. Some of these are managing PEG access channels, which are specific public education and government designated channels that Comcast works with Metro East to provide. They oversee them, provide technical and quality maintenance, and do a variety of other things related to those channels. They also do a lot of live programming and then managing signal transport from various sites. In addition to many other things they do as our PEG access provider, they provide services to schools and the general community. School services include hands-on media training in community groups, and then hands-on learning at schools and libraries. And then more focused on community, they have digital literacy classes, internships, training and workforce development, low or no cost public classes, low barrier equipment access. They produce shows and related projects, and they provide coverage of community events. I'm going to pause there to highlight that this is all for the IGA with Troutdale. So I'm going to move on to the second part of this presentation, which is just for the updated franchise agreement. So next slide, please.
And board and commissioners, do you want to hear the second part of the presentation now or have questions and vote on the motion before you?
What, do you have an opinion? Would you like to ask the questions now?
Let's,
Yeah.
oh, you said you want to do them separate.
Yeah, I think it's just jump in.
So we'll move forward. Okay.
I motion that we adopt our, what number are we on?
R5.
R5.
Well, it's already been moved in second, so if there's,
Or questions? So, yeah.
It's been a long day. First, do we have any public testimony on this item?
Yes, we have one person signed up.
Okay.
Julie Omlachuk.
Okay. Thank you for being here this afternoon, Julie. And if you can just state your name again for the record.
Hi, I'm Julie Omelchuk, and I'm president of the board of directors for Metro East Community Media. I won't take much of your time, but on behalf of the Metro East board, staff, and our East County communities, I wanted to thank the chair, commissioners, for your support during this transition from the Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission. Also, I wanted to call out Chair Vega Peterson and Commissioner Jones-Dixon, who are longtime supporters of our services in East Multnomah County. But I especially wanted to highlight Commissioner Moyer and Hayden's contribution to this process. Hayden dropped into the middle of this transition when he first started in his position with Commissioner Moyer's office.
He's earning his stripes.
Yeah, that didn't seem to faze him, though. He was willing to listen to your community about Metro East services and impact. He grasped issues quickly and reached out with questions. He figured out how to be a good partner with Troutdale, Fairview, and Wood Village, an area not in their district, but recognizing a high service needs area of the county. He shepherded the process and documents to get this done by the end of this fiscal year so that we could have continuity of services starting in this upcoming year. And he did all this among getting up to speed and addressing the other pressing issues in the county. So we feel it was an impressive feat. So thank you, Commissioner Moyer and Hayden, for all your work on this, and we look forward to continuing our work with you all in the coming years. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And Tasia, there's no other public testimony, is that correct?
Yes.
Just as a formality, any questions? Can we just do a roll call vote, and then I'm going to hand the gavel over to Commissioner Brem Edwards, because I have to.
Commissioner Moyer?
Yes.
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Brem Edwards?
Yes.
Vice Chair Jones-Dixon?
Yes. It passes. Thank you. Lunch.
For some of us.
Yes.
R6, resolution to approve a revised franchise agreement for cable services between Comcast of Illinois, Ohio, Oregon, LLC, Multnomah County, and the cities of Fairview, Troutdale, and Wood Village.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and Commissioners. My name is Hayden Ferris, Policy Director for Commissioner Moyer, he, him pronouns. Resuming the presentation, I believe we're good to go on that. Can you pull up the second to last slide? Thank you. So this action is updating the franchise agreement so that is in line with a post-MHCRC world. In 2025, when you renewed the franchise agreement, it listed MHCRC as the regulatory authority, had Gresham, Troutdale, Fairview, Wood Village, and Multnomah County as jurisdictions, and Comcast would send reports to the MHCRC monthly. With this revised agreement, it makes the jurisdictions the regulatory authority, removes Gresham as a party per their request, and adjusts the Comcast reports to every 6 months or upon change simply to reflect the reality of Comcast's stability and slow shrinking, and also to reduce administrative load for jurisdictions. And that's it. Next slide is just questions. So happy to answer any.
All right, thank you. Do we have any public testimony?
No.
Okay, no public testimony. I'm going to call on commissioners to see if you have any questions. Commissioner Moyer.
I just want to thank Hayden for embarking on this as one of his first major projects in my office. He really did a very thorough job. I am very grateful for this. I'm a little annoyed with the city of Gresham and would like to be compensated for my staff time for it, but I just really want to thank him. Garrett, who has left us, although he was here today, also put a lot of work into this before his departure, as I'm sure people in the county attorney's office did it well as well, but it was a lot of work, and I appreciate it.
Commissioner Singleton?
No questions. I will plus one the great work and also appreciate Metro East for the work they do in this community.
Great. I'm just going to echo the previous comments of appreciation. This was in my portfolio at one point in time, but mysteriously it moved to Commissioner Moyer when all the action happened. So thank you, Hayden, for your work on this, the presentation today, and thank you, Commissioner Moyer, for shepherding this through. Board Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Moyer?
Yes.
Commissioner Brem Edwards?
Yes. The resolution is approved. Now we have time for Any board comments? And I think I know what to do to call on Commissioner Singleton.
I promise to only do a couple. I won't even read all of them. Just a couple on the national level that I think are urgent. Want to make sure that my colleagues know there's been advocacy happening with through our federal delegation to push on the White House, or through our government relations to push on the White House and our federal delegation to have the president sign the bipartisan housing bill that was passed and not hold it hostage to the SAVE Act. So I don't know that there's anything we need to do, but I would hope that GR would let us know pretty quickly, because there's a 10-day time window. But just again, disappointment at an authoritarian regime who's trying to hold a bipartisan bill that will have massive impacts in our communities hostage to horrible voting rights restrictions. Additionally, two major opinions yesterday about from the Supreme Court. One is a law that allows the government to stop asylum seekers from physically setting foot in the country, which effectively keeps them from applying for asylum. The other was giving the president unrestrained power to end the temporary protected status program, which has more than a dozen countries included in that. So migrants who have been living legally in the U.S. from those countries will revert to illegal status, meaning they will lose their jobs and face deportation, with many of them forced to leave American-born children behind. These decisions just continue to have a terrible effect on our community and are a further assault on our community members. In addition, for those who have not been tracking, the federal government has been delaying processing of immigration documents and renewals, which is causing people the inability to work, get unemployment, or other services. It is particularly impacting DACA recipients, and we have already had instances in this region where staff have had to be let go from another local government because of losing that status. And I just want to talk about it because it's an atrocity and we need to call this stuff out. If you're an immigrant who is waiting to hear back, there are a few things you can do to protect yourself. Please call the Equity Corps of Oregon, the hotline, and start the process of securing an immigration attorney. Their number is 1-888-274-7292. And you should also connect with elected officials, especially our congressional elected officials who can help track your case. Most have information on their websites on how you can do that. And then also please visit Oregon for All, which has some informational videos to make sure folks know their rights and what some of the different processes are. And I will save the rest for next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Singleton. Commissioner Moyer, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to let people know that today from 5 to 10 p.m. is the party grand opening of the Darcel 15 Plaza, which is downtown, and really exciting to be opening that up. It should be a fun evening. I think it's a fair chance there might be some drag performances. Here's hoping. But please do come out. I know this has been a long time in the making. It is celebrating a true community hero who has done, in his lifetime, or her lifetime, I don't know what pronouns they preferred, an incredible amount for the LGBTQIA2S+ community. I remember meeting Darcel at the age of 22 when I got my first campaign job for the Democratic Party and was doing LGBTQ outreach and voter registration. Darcel welcomed me into their club to do voter reg and also hosted some events, and that was very typical of their generosity to the community and their commitment to the city of Portland. So this is a wonderful opportunity to celebrate a beautiful life and have a lot of fun today, so please come out and join.
I'm going to go back to thank you, Commissioner Moyer. I'm going to go back to Commissioner Singleton for a very important announcement from D2.
Thank you. St. John's Library opens on Saturday. Please come out, celebrate with the community. I'm very excited. The community's very excited. We had an awesome preview, but Saturday morning, over at the St. John's Library at 9:15, programming will start, and there'll be some amazing music and just community celebration. Thank you.
All right, I don't have any comments. That concludes today's regular board meeting. Our next meeting is Tuesday, June 30th at 10 a.m. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.